Chapter 1207. The World Channel was in an uproar as it was flooded with messages. After Yi Chen glanced at it, he could not help but raise his brows. If you want to get the treasures, you have to see if you have the chance. Yi Chen was reborn and naturally knew the benefits of the treasures. He also knew that the Chaos World was where the treasures gathered. In order to plunder the Chaos World's treasures, Yi Chen had set his goal of being the first to ascend to the Chaos World. Only the first to ascend to the Chaos World would have the chance to be the first to plunder the Chaos World's treasures. Originally, Yi Chen thought that this plan could only be carried out by himself. However, when he was in the secret realm of the underground palace, Yi Chen accidentally subdued the howling celestial dog from the lower realm. This also allowed Yi Chen to obtain the ability to plunder the Chaos World's treasures in advance. To be more precise, Yi Chen had asked the howling celestial dog to return to the Chaos World and plunder the Chaos World's treasures. Of course, things like natural spirit roots either belonged to the powerful beings of the Chaos World or were protected by powerful formations. The howling celestial dog either did not dare to snatch them or did not have the ability to obtain them. However, this did not stop the howling celestial dog from plundering other treasures. Of course, the Chaos World was very big. Even if the howling celestial dog was given a lot of time, it would not be able to plunder the Chaos World clean. However, the problem was that even if the players ascended to the Chaos World, they would not directly obtain the ability to plunder treasures. After all, when the players ascended to the Chaos World, they were only at the mortal evolution state. It was impossible for them to plunder the Chaos World's treasures at such a state. However, it was different for Yi Chen. As long as Yi Chen ascended to the Chaos World, the treasures of the Chaos World would not be opened to Yi Chen directly. However, if Yi Chen wanted to plunder them, the chances of success would be very high. One must know that Yi Chen still had a rare treasure, the aura concealment bead. With this, Yi Chen's aura could be completely removed at any time. No demons would be able to detect Yi Chen's arrival. Of course, the mighty figures of the primordial world were an exception. However, the problem was that Yi Chen would not deliberately go to places where there were mighty figures from the primordial world. At the very least, it was impossible for Yi Chen to go there before he had the corresponding strength. Of course, this was the case before Yi Chen ascended to the untainted world. If Yi Chen's realm soared, Yi Chen would be able to rob more precious heavenly materials and earthly treasures. He could even rob the powerful figures in the untainted world. Therefore, it was basically a pipe dream for players to obtain treasures of heaven and earth to increase their bone frames. Yi Chen would not allow such a situation to happen. Whether it was selfishness or self-interest, so what? Yi Chen did not want to give away the benefits that were at his fingertips to others. I wonder how much good stuff Howling Celestial Dog has collected. I don't want to think about this anymore. First, I need to integrate the 5 elements spiritual body and advance to the 5 elements divine body. That's the most important thing. At that thought, Yi Chen used his mind. The gold spirit pearl, fire spirit pearl, water spirit pearl, wood spirit pearl, and earth spirit pearl instantly appeared above Yi Chen's head and started to rotate slowly. At that moment, the aura of the 5 elements directly erupted from Yi Chen's head and poured into Yi Chen. Yi Chen, who noticed this, couldn't help but smile. Then, his essence soul moved and instantly materialized. He then sat cross-legged above the 5 spirit pearls. Yi Chen, who was in his essence soul state, looked at his physical body below and then pointed at it. There was a buzzing sound, and Yi Chen's physical body instantly became colorful. He didn't know how long it would take to integrate the 5 elements spiritual body and advance to the 5 elements divine body. To be safe, he had to get 3,000 Tao comprehension stones first. The higher the grade of the bone frame, the longer the time needed to advance. If it was someone else, they might have advanced directly. However, Yi Chen didn't choose to do so. Advancing to a high-grade bone frame wasn't a joke. It could be advanced just because one wanted to. If one wasn't careful, they might suffer a huge backlash. If it was light, they would be severely injured. If it was serious, they might die. The bone frame that Yi Chen wanted to advance, the 5 elements divine body, was ranked at the top among the high-grade bone frames. After all, this was a bone frame that was formed by the integration of the 5 elements. Heaven and earth were made up of the 5 elements. Although there were other things besides the 5 elements, the foundation of the world was the 5 elements. Without the 5 elements, no world was complete. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that the difficulty of advancing to the 5 elements divine body was extremely high for Yi Chen. It wasn't something that could be done easily. Once he succeeded, Yi Chen would be the representative of the 5 elements. He would be able to use the 5 elements as he wished. He could even use the power of the 5 elements after the integration. As for the Tao of the 5 elements, it would also open its doors to Yi Chen because of this. Of course, the most important thing was that Yi Chen's cultivation speed would increase by 100 times. This was why the 5 elements divine body was so domineering. It was also the reason why Yi Chen insisted on advancing to the 5 elements divine body. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's primordial spirit moved. 3,000 enlightenment stones instantly appeared in midair. Looking at the enlightenment stones floating in midair, Yi Chen chose to use them without hesitation. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully using the enlightenment stones. Enlightenment mode activated. Duration, 3,000 minutes. Once the system's notification ended, Yi Chen entered the state of integration and advancement without hesitation. At the same time, an extremely mysterious aura appeared from Yi Chen's body and the primordial spirit that was sitting cross-legged above the 5 elements spiritual pearl. Then, it spread out. In the real world, in the hall of the Castellan's mansion in Samsara City. With a creak, the door of the diamond-level game capsule opened. Then, Yi Chen, who was lying inside, slowly flew up and sat cross-legged in midair. At the same time, the light of the 5 elements appeared from Yi Chen's body and rotated continuously. Along with the changes, an inexplicable mysterious aura appeared from Yi Chen's body. Flaming Tiger Yilin, who was sitting cross-legged in the hall and cultivating, suddenly opened her eyes. Then, she looked directly at Yi Chen, who was sitting cross-legged in midair, and cried out in surprise. "Brother!" In the backyard of the Castellan's mansion in Samsara City. Empress Harinana, who was chatting with the girls, was suddenly stunned. Then, she suddenly stood up. When Zhao Yu saw Empress Harinana's actions, she was stunned and asked, "Nana, what's wrong?" When Empress Harinana heard this, she hurriedly said, "Brother Yu, my husband is breaking down. Big sister, my husband is currently in the process of evolving his bone frame and cannot be disturbed." When Zhao Yu heard this, her face suddenly became serious. Then, she hurriedly said, "Let's go. We can't let anyone come near." Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, the 5 sisters, De Qiao, Xiao Qiao, and Philos Aureus all nodded when they heard this. Then, they flew straight to the city lord's mansion's main hall. In just a few breaths, they arrived at the city lord's mansion's main hall. In the main hall, Flaming Tiger Yilin was the first to notice Yi Chen's change. When she saw the girls arrive, she opened her mouth but didn't say a word. Obviously, Flaming Tiger Yilin also noticed Yi Chen's current state and knew that she couldn't disturb him. At this moment, Empress Harinana's face suddenly changed. Then, she hurriedly looked at Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and the other girls and transmitted her voice. "Sister, my husband needs a large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi for his advancement. Quickly take out all the supreme-grade spirit stones that my husband gave me previously." Chapter 1208. As soon as Empress Hari and Nana finished speaking, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philostes Aureus hurriedly took out all the top-level spiritual stones from the storage rings made by Yi Chen and piled them up in the hall. Seeing this, Empress Hari and Nana used her mind to take out the 1,000,000 immortal stones given by Yi Chen. In the next second, Nana made a grabbing motion in the void with her right hand. Whoosh! Whoosh! Then, all the spirit-gathering formation discs placed by Yi Chen in Samsara City flew to the hall of the Castellan's mansion without exception. Zhao Yu, who noticed Empress Hari's serious expression, couldn't help but feel nervous. Then, she hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Empress Hari. "Nana, are these enough? If not, I'll go to that world and ask my husband's soldiers to bring the top-level spiritual stones here." Empress Hari and Nana shook her head and said with a serious expression, "I don't know the exact details. But the devouring power produced by the advancement of my husband's innate bone is too strong. If we take out all the immortal stones, maybe it will be enough." "All right, I'll head over to that world now," Zhao Yu replied without hesitation. She then returned to the game world after finishing her sentence. At this moment, Black Emperor, who went out to patrol Yi Xiaoyu, the treasure-hunting fish, Little Golden, the golden-haired monkey, and Little Turtle, who had the bloodline of the Black Tortoise, all flew back in a hurry. As soon as they entered the door, they took out all the top-level spiritual stones they had. When they were outside, they had sensed the surge of spiritual qi in the governor's mansion of Samsara City. It was obviously abnormal. They were afraid that Samsara City was in danger, so they hurried back. Although they didn't know exactly what had happened, the fact that Yi Chen was floating in the air and sitting cross-legged, as well as the pile of top-grade spirit stones in the hall, clearly told them one thing. Their master, Yi Chen, was in urgent need of heaven and earth spiritual energy, and a massive amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Therefore, they did not hesitate to take out all the supreme-grade spirit stones that their master, Yi Chen, had given them. On the city wall of Samsara City, Zhou Tsang, who was in charge of guarding Samsara City in the real world, turned pale and looked in the direction of the Castellan mansion. Seeing Zhou Tsang's strange expression and his eyes fixed on the Castellan mansion, the vice-general of Samsara City was stunned. He hurriedly asked, "General, is the Lord in danger?" "I'm not sure, but there is a strong wave of spiritual qi. It should be the Lord advancing or breaking through." Zhou Tsang looked at the vice-general and shouted, "Pass on the order. Everyone be alert. No one, no beast, no bird, no beast is allowed near Samsara City. Even if it's an ant, a bug or a sparrow, kill it." "Yes, General. General." The deputy general's eyes widened when he heard this. Then, he bowed and cupped his fist. With that, the deputy general ran off to relay Zhou Tsang's order. Not long after, the soldiers in charge of guarding Samsara City in the real world were all on high alert. They stared at the sky and the ground outside Samsara City. Everything they had was given to them by their lord, Yi Chen. Without Yi Chen, they would have either starved to death or died in the chaos. They would not be able to break through to the unimaginable mortal evolution state and possess the spirit artifacts set that they had never heard of before. They were grateful and moved. They were willing to offer their loyalty to Yi Chen and their everything to Yi Chen. Now that they heard that their lord, Yi Chen, was at a critical juncture, how could they not be alert? They did not want their lord, Yi Chen, to be affected in the slightest. If he was really affected, they would not be able to escape the blame even if they died 1,000 times. In the game world, Samsara Immortal City, in the backyard of the Castellan mansion, the space suddenly distorted, and then Zhao Yu appeared directly there. "Greetings, mistress." The maids in the backyard were stunned when they saw this. Then, they hurriedly bowed to Zhao Yu. Zhao Yu heard this and waved her hand. Then, with a thought, she released her spirit sense instantly. When Zhao Yu's spirit sense detected that Yi Chen in the Castellan mansion was in the same state as in the real world, she tried hard to calm her violently beating heart. Then, she hurriedly soared into the air, and flew straight to the drill ground. As soon as Zhao Yu arrived at the drill ground of Samsara Immortal City, she saw Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials who were in a state of cultivation, as well as all the soldiers of Samsara Immortal City. In the next second, Zhao Yu shouted without hesitation, "Wake up!" If it was any other time, Zhao Yu would definitely not come over and disturb their cultivation. But now it was not any other time. At this moment, Yi Chen in the real world was different from before. This time, he needed a huge amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth. If she could not gather enough spiritual energy from heaven and earth for Yi Chen would definitely fail this time. Once he failed, Yi Chen would most likely be severely injured. This was not the outcome that Zhao Yu wanted to see. As soon as Zhao Yu finished speaking, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials, as well as the soldiers on the drill ground, opened their eyes simultaneously. "Little sister, why are you so nervous?" Sensing that Zhao Yu's complexion had paled, Zhao Yun's expression abruptly changed as he hastily asked. "Hubby's physical body is in danger now. He urgently needs a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Hurry up and go to that world and place the supreme grade spirit stones around hubby." When Zhao Yu heard this, she no longer cared about etiquette and hurriedly shouted. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, Mi Zhu, and the other generals and officials all paled when they heard this. As for the soldiers on the drill ground, they immediately stood up. In the next second, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials shouted in unison. "Everyone, listen up. Go to that world and take out all the spirit stones you have." "Yes, General." When the 41 million soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City heard this, they bowed and saluted without any hesitation. After that, with a single thought, the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City disappeared without a trace with a swoosh. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials also disappeared at this moment. After sending the message, Zhao Yu hastily flew back to the main hall of the city governor's mansion. After carefully observing Yi Chen for a while, Zhao Yu finally confirmed one thing. At this moment, Yi Chen was completely different from when he was refining innate spiritual treasures and could release his divine sense to observe the situation in the outside world. Sensing that Yi Chen had completely entered the selfless state, Zhao Yu wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and murmured, "Husband, you must advance steadily." Chapter 1209. With that, Zhao Yu gave Yi Chen a meaningful look. Then, with a single thought, she turned into a golden ball of light and disappeared into the void. In the real world, on the main street of Reincarnation City, space suddenly distorted on a large scale. Then, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, and the other generals and officials, as well as 41 million soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City, appeared in droves. At this moment, the previously quiet Reincarnation City was suddenly filled with an intense aura of war. Along with the aura of war, there was also an extremely tense atmosphere. "Quiet. Silence. Everyone, line up at the Castellan's mansion. Take out all the supreme-grade spirit stones that the Lord has bestowed upon you, place them down, and leave immediately." At Zhao Yun's incomparably solemn order, the soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City bowed to Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei from afar. Then, they lined up at the Castellan's mansion. On the main street, a few members of the Beauty Alliance who had just logged off and were about to take a stroll in the city saw Reincarnation Immortal City's soldiers as soon as they stepped out. At this moment, the members of the Beauty Alliance were all stunned. Are the enemies here?" It doesn't seem like it. They're all master soldiers and have been on the battlefield for a long time. Even if they've encountered an enemy, their expressions shouldn't be so grave. Then, what's going on? The direction they're heading seems to be the Castellan's mansion. At this point, the members of the Beauty Alliance couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. At the same time, the thought that something was wrong with their master, Yi Chen, who had just taken them in not long ago, involuntarily appeared in their minds. In the next second, the members of the Beauty Alliance's expressions changed drastically. Then, they hurriedly ran to the residence of Li Mengyao, the leader of the Beauty Alliance. At the entrance of the hall of the Castellan mansion in Samsara City, Empress Hari and Nana felt relieved when they saw more than 41 million people. This time, it should be more or less enough, Empress Hari Nana. Although she had never been to the game world, she had become Yi Chen's woman, so she knew some things about Yi Chen's subordinates. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Empress Hari and Nana knew that even the weakest of Yi Chen's subordinates had thousands of top-grade spirit stones. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, Pang Tong, and other officials had millions of top-grade spirit stones. In Empress Hari and Nana's opinion, these spirit stones were enough for Yi Chen's bone structure advancement. As soon as Empress Hari and Nana's voice transmission finished, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Huang Yueying, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao, Little Qiao, Philos Aureus, and Yi Chen's pets of intelligence all breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Chen was their family and everything to them. They didn't want to see Yi Chen in danger. But now, Empress Hari and Nana's words finally reduced the big stone hanging in their hearts by more than half. As for completely relaxing, it was impossible for them to do so before Yi Chen completed his advancement. At this moment, the space in the City Lord Mansion's hall suddenly distorted. Then, they saw Zhao Yu, who had gone to the game world to call Yi Chen's subordinates and soldiers to the real world and take out the supreme-grade spirit stones, directly appear here. Empress Hari and Nana, who had been paying attention to Yi Chen, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and the other girls, all called out to her through voice transmission. Elder sister. Zhao Yu was Yi Chen's first woman. Therefore, her position as the elder sister was fixed. The girls didn't have any disgust or jealousy because of this. As for not speaking and communicating through voice transmission, it was because the girls didn't want to affect Yi Chen, who was in a state of crazy absorption of spiritual energy. After hearing the girls' voice transmission, Zhao Yu nodded and then looked at Yi Chen, who was floating in the air and sitting cross-legged. Nan, is it enough if we add up all of our top-grade spirit stones? If not, we'll go out and rob the other cities. Even if those lords like my husband don't have many spirit stones, we'll rob them. We can't let my husband's advancement be interrupted. As soon as Zhao Yu finished her voice transmission, Empress Hari and Nana nodded and then said through voice transmission, Elder sister, according to the speed of my husband's absorption of spiritual energy, all of our supreme-grade spirit stones should be enough. Besides, I still have 1 million immortal stones. However, I'm afraid of accidents, so I'm going to go out and collect some spirit stones for my husband. Nana, your realm is the highest. If anything happens to my husband, only you can intervene. We can't help, so don't go out. At this point, Zhao Yu looked directly at the flaming tiger Yi Lin, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey Xiao Jin, little turtle with the black tortoise bloodline, and the Black Emperor, a member of the royal family of the Starry Sky Sword Dragon race. She said through voice transmission, I'll give you a mission. Go to every city and the gathering place of the demon race and rob as many spirit stones as you can find. No matter what grade they are, rob as many as you can. Spirit stones were not valued by the players at the place where the world had changed, but now they were treasured by almost all the players. This was because the players at this moment, whether they were humans or demons, had discovered the benefits of using spirit stones to speed up cultivation. It was also for this reason that almost all the capable players had some spirit stones in their hands, and those in power had the most spirit stones. Otherwise, Zhao Yu would not have given this order. As for Zhao Yu, she was a native in the newbie area of the Three Kingdoms game, so it was impossible for her to not know about the situation in the real world. After all, Zhao Yu was Yi Chen's woman, and she would be living in Samsara City in the real world for a long time. Therefore, Yi Chen could not tell Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and the other girls about the situation in the real world. Otherwise, if Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and the other girls encountered unexpected situations and did not know how to deal with it, wouldn't it be bad? Okay. Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, Treasure Hunting Fish Yi Xiaoyu, Little Gold, Little Tortoise, and Black Emperor replied without hesitation after hearing Zhao Yu's voice transmission. With that, all the pets soared into the air and flew out of Samsara City. Big sister, do you want us to go too? Diao Chan glanced at the departing group of pets and asked through voice transmission. After hearing Diao Chan's voice transmission, Zhao Yu shook her head and replied, "We need someone to guard this place. This world is not that safe. If we all leave and someone or a demon comes, and only Nana is here, my husband will be affected." After hearing this, Diao Chan nodded her head, then looked worriedly at Yi Chen, who was sitting cross-legged in the air in the hall. Kai Yin saw this and patted Diao Chan's shoulder gently. Then, she said through voice transmission, "Husband will be fine. Husband will advance safely. You must believe in him." Diao Chan nodded gently. Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao, and Philos Aureus put their hands together and prayed to the sky. Chapter 12:10. Reincarnation City, where the Beauties' Alliance resided. What? Li Mengyao jumped to her feet after hearing her subordinates report. Sister Yao Yao, it's true. Master's soldiers all looked serious. No matter how you look at it, it seems like Master is in danger. Otherwise, they wouldn't have such expressions and wouldn't have come to the real world all of a sudden from the game world, a slim member of the Beauties' Alliance said hurriedly. The two members of the Beauties' Alliance who had also seen the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City nodded and said, "Sister Yao Yao, we're telling the truth. Big Sis Yao Yao, what we said is true." Wang Mengmeng, the little loli who had come to visit Li Mengyao, turned pale. She looked at Li Mengyao and asked, "Sister Yao Yao, what should we do? How can we help Master?" Li Mengyao paced back and forth with a grave expression. Then, she looked at Hu Xiaoye and said, "Xiaoye, why don't you go to the City Lord's mansion and ask what we need to do? We can't enter the City Lord's mansion without Master's permission. Moreover, we'll be killed on the spot if we go there." When Hu Xiaoye heard this, she looked in the direction of the City Lord's mansion with a worried expression on her face. Although the Beauties' Alliance had been enslaved by Yi Chen and brought to the Reincarnation City, the tens of thousands of women in the Beauties' Alliance didn't have the right to enter the City Lord's mansion freely. Zhou Tsang, who was guarding the Reincarnation City, issued a harsh order. He forbade the members of the Beauties' Alliance from entering the City Lord's mansion without permission. Those who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that the atmosphere in the Reincarnation City was extremely tense. If the members of the Beauties' Alliance insisted on entering the City Lord's mansion at this juncture, they would most likely be treated as spies and killed on the spot. After all, Yi Chen's subordinates were only loyal to Yi Chen. They didn't care if the members of the Beauties' Alliance were women or beautiful. For them, any potential danger must be eliminated. They couldn't let their master, Yi Chen, be threatened in the slightest. It couldn't be helped. The members of the Beauties' Alliance weren't Yi Chen's women, but Yi Chen's slaves. Otherwise, Yi Chen's subordinates wouldn't do this. Hu Xiaoye's words, Li Mengyao's alliance's alliance. She wanted to help Yi Chen, even if she could only contribute a small amount of her strength. As long as she could help Yi Chen, she would be willing to die. However, the cruel reality clearly told her one thing. She and all the other members of the Beauty's Alliance couldn't even enter the City Lord's mansion before becoming Yi Chen's woman. This feeling of helplessness, wave after wave, stimulated Li Mengyao's nerves. Mengyao there was. After a short moment of helplessness, Li Mengyao took a deep breath and said, "I'll ask. Just outside the governor's mansion. I won't go in. If I'm killed because of this, don't hold a grudge." "I'll go with you," Hu Xiaoye said without hesitation. "We'll go too," Wang Mengmeng and the other 3 members of the Beauty's Alliance who noticed the abnormality in Samsara City said in unison. "Okay, we'll go together." Li Mengyao opened her mouth but couldn't say no. Li Mengyao led Hu Xiaoye, Wang Mengmeng and the other 3 members of the Beauty's Alliance to the governor's mansion. Soon, Li Mengyao and the others met the army of the Samsara Immortal City. They were marching silently on the street. A solemn captain saw Li Mengyao and the others and his face darkened. He scolded them in a low voice, "Stop! Stop! We're Master's slaves. We want to know how we can help Master." Li Mengyao took a step forward and asked stubbornly. The captain was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he said seriously, "If you want to help, give us spirit stones. I don't care how much you have. I want all of them. But you can't enter the governor's mansion." "Spirit stones?" Li Mengyao was stunned. She quickly said, "We have spirit stones. We have spirit stones. We have about 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. It's not enough, but give it to me first." When the Major of Reincarnation Immortal City heard this, he sighed in disappointment and said. Li Mengyao immediately took off the storage pouch on her waist and handed it over to the captain of the Reincarnation Immortal City. "Thank you." The captain took the storage pouch and looked at it. He then cupped his fists and thanked Li Mengyao. His master, Yi Chen, was in need of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If he could get more spirit stones, it would be of great help to Yi Chen. It was because of this that the captain thanked Li Mengyao. Otherwise, he wouldn't have treated Li Mengyao and the others so nicely. It was all because Li Mengyao and the others were slaves. Their status was lower than that of the maids in the Samsara Immortal City. As soon as the captain finished his words, the soldiers of the Samsara Immortal City, who were rushing towards the governor's mansion, put down their hostility towards Li Mengyao and the others. Li Mengyao hesitated and asked, "Is there anything else? Is there anything else we need to do?" "No," the captain replied. He was stunned for a moment. When he came back to his senses, he looked at Li Mengyao and asked, "Do you know where spirit stones are? Do you know where in this world there are spirit stones, large amounts of spirit stones?" Li Mengyao shook her head and said, "I don't know. However, the leaders of the major cities should have a lot of spirit stones." When the Major General heard that, his eyes went wide. It was at this point that a burly figure flew over and descended from the sky. After a bam, Dian Wei, who was hideous but tough, appeared in this place. In the next second, Dian Wei stared at Li Mengyao with his eyes full of brutality and asked, "What are you talking about? Are you telling the truth?" Being stared at by Dian Wei's brutal eyes, Li Mengyao shuddered. Then she nodded hard and said, "That's right. It's true, General Dian." Dian Wei took a deep breath and soared into the sky. He quickly flew toward the City Lord's mansion. Samsara City, Governor's Mansion. The soldiers of the Samsara Immortal City kept entering the Governor's mansion. They took out their supreme-grade spirit stones and left quickly. They had to make way for the soldiers behind them. While the soldiers were taking out their supreme-grade spirit stones, Dian Wei landed on the ground and looked at Zhao Yun, Huang Zhong, Guan Yu and the others who had just arrived. "Let's go. Let's get out of the city and collect spirit stones for the Lord." Chapter 12:11. As soon as Dian Wei's voice fell, Zhao Yun, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba and the other generals, who had just taken out all the supreme-grade spirit stones on them, suddenly widened their eyes. At this moment, a tyrannical and domineering aura directly rose from Zhao Yun, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba and the other generals. Although snatching spirit stones for Yi Chen didn't seem very proper, for Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba and the other generals, they didn't care at all. As long as they could help their lord Yi Chen, they wouldn't care even if he killed everyone in this world. It could be said that for their lord, Yi Chen, they were willing to do anything. Wait a moment, let me talk to the mistresses. After Zhao Yun finished speaking to Guan Yu, Dian Wei, Zhang Fei and the other generals, he directly looked at Zhao Yu and bowed. Mistress Yun, go and plunder the spirit stones of this world. If there's anything important, you can send soldiers at will. Zhao Yu, who was about to tell Zhao Yun, Guan Yu, Dian Wei and the other generals to go out and plunder the spirit stones, couldn't help but be stunned when she heard this. Then, she asked through voice transmission, "Big brother, how do you know where the spirit stones are in this world?" It was General Dian who said. Zhao Yun had just said this when he suddenly remembered that just now, Dian Wei had sensed the strange movements of the Beauties' Alliance and directly went over with a bad temper. After coming back to his senses, Zhao Yun said through voice transmission, full of emotion, "If, Yun, I'm not wrong, it should be the slaves the Lord took in, that is, the people of the Beauties' Alliance who told General Dian." Zhao Yun didn't think highly of the Beauties' Alliance. To be more precise, Zhao Yun didn't have a good impression of the Beauties' Alliance. This couldn't be helped. After all, the members of the Beauties' Alliance were all players, and Zhao Yun didn't have a good impression of players. Of course, Yi Chen was an exception. As for the other players, most of them were selfish or ambitious. None of them were honest. But now, when Yi Chen was in urgent need of spirit stones, Beauty's Alliance took the initiative to tell him where the spirit stones were. How could Zhao Yun not be moved? Of course, he wasn't moved. Even so, Zhao Yun's impression of the Beauty's Alliance had changed a little. "It's them." Zhao Yun nodded after a short pause. Then she looked at Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, and the other generals and said through voice transmission, "I'm counting on you." Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Mi Zhu, Gan Ning, and Zhang Liao all bowed and cupped their fists. "We won't let you down." After the generals finished speaking, they soared into the sky and flew out of Samsara City. Seeing this, Zhao Yu took a deep breath. Then she looked straight at the main hall of the Castellan's mansion, where Yi Chen was sitting cross-legged in the air. "My husband, you must advance smoothly." Just as Zhao Yu was thinking of this, there was a series of explosions. Then she saw a 1-meter-high pile of top-grade spiritual stones in the main hall of the Castellan's mansion, shattering into pieces. At this moment, a large amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth exploded. But before it could spread, it was swallowed up by Yi Chen, who was floating in the air. Empress Hari and Nana, who had been paying attention to Yi Chen, suddenly changed their expressions. Then they released their divine senses and shouted through voice transmission, "Everyone, speed up! Don't waste any time!" The soldiers of Samsara Immortal City, who were already very fast, were stunned when they heard this. Then they ran their genuine chi without hesitation and rushed toward the Castellan's mansion. The soldiers who had taken the spiritual stones did the same. They rushed out of the Castellan's mansion and made way for the latecomers. In an instant, the number of top-grade spiritual stones increased rapidly. Finally, they caught up with the speed of Yi Chen's consumption. Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao and Little Qiao, and Philos Aureus were relieved when they saw this. The speed at which Yi Chen absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, or swallowed, the top-grade spiritual stones, was so terrifying that he had emptied a pile of top-grade spiritual stones in an instant. If they didn't replenish the top-grade spiritual stones quickly, the pile of top-grade spiritual stones in the hall would soon be swallowed up by Yi Chen. Time passed by slowly. Yi Chen, who was constantly integrating the 5 elements' spiritual bodies and trying to advance to the divine body of 5 elements, was in a special state. The mysterious aura he automatically released gradually became stronger. Then it rushed out of the castellan's mansion and soon enveloped the entire Samsara city. Such an environment was very helpful for cultivation, but no one chose to cultivate. Yi Chen's women were like this, his soldiers were like this, Yi Chen's slaves were like this, and all the members of Beauty's alliance were like this. The soldiers were still taking out the spiritual stones, but the others were waiting anxiously. Yi Chen was the castellan of Samsara Immortal City and the backbone of everyone's hearts. No one wanted to see Yi Chen fail to advance. 300 miles to the west of Samsara City, above a city built by Lord-level players, the flaming tiger Yi Lin was emitting a violent aura. She looked coldly at the dumbfounded players in the city and on the city walls. "Hand over the spiritual stones, or I'll kill you all." 400 miles to the south of Samsara City, above a city built by several Lord-level players, Dian Wei, emitting a murderous aura, roared. "I am Dian Wei, the general of Samsara Immortal City. Hand over the spiritual stones now, or I'll kill you all." The players' territories around Samsara City were robbed one by Yi Chen's pets and generals. This caused all of the players to be quite frightened. Who was Yi Chen? He was the strongest player in the world, the strongest player in the East, and his strength was unparalleled. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chen, who didn't usually cause trouble, was now sending his subordinates to rob the players of spiritual stones. Was there any justice in this world? Was there any law in this world? Despite their resentment, no one dared to refuse to hand over the spiritual stones because no one wanted to die. That was an existence that could fly in the sky. Who would dare to resist? It was also for this reason that the leaders of the players in the various cities had to put on smiling faces, even though they were obviously very sullen. They took out their precious spiritual stones one by one and gave them to Yi Chen's subordinates, spiritual pets, and generals. Time passed little by little. After Yi Chen's generals and pets had robbed all the cities within 100,000 miles of Samsara City, they hurriedly flew back to Samsara City. Just as they returned to Samsara City one by one, the last supreme-grade spirit stone shattered with a pop sound. Upon realizing this, all of the powerful beings and generals hurriedly took out all of the spirit stones that they had plundered. At that moment, a series of bang-bang sounds could be heard. Then, all the spiritual stones exploded and turned into spiritual qi that filled the sky. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chen devoured all of it. Sensing this, Empress Hari, Nana, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei's expressions all changed. Chapter 12:12. All the spirit stones had been consumed, but Yi Chen had not completed his advancement. No one present wanted to see such a result. Otherwise, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Guojia, and the other generals and officials would not have such a drastic change in expression. "Nana, can we force out the spirit qi in our bodies for our husband to use?" Zhao Yu's anxious voice transmission was heard. Empress Hari, Nana shook her head and said, "The spirit qi in our bodies contains spirit qi. The spirit qi in our bodies contains our aura. Although husband can absorb and refine it, it will affect husband's advancement." Zhao Yu's face turned pale when she heard this. Her body swayed back and forth involuntarily. Empress Hari, Nana, saw this and quickly supported Zhao Yu. "Sister, there are still 1,000,000 immortal stones. Although they contain immortal qi, our husband's foundation has long surpassed the immortal level. Moreover, our husband's body is extremely strong. It's not impossible for him to absorb them." As soon as Empress Hari, Nana's words were heard, a middle-grade immortal stone was instantly shattered. At this moment, a gust of wind blew in the hall, blowing at the clothes of everyone outside the hall. "Pa-pa" sounds could be heard. This was a reaction that would only occur when the top spirit qi of heaven and earth, or immortal chi, appeared in the mortal world. Just as everyone began to feel nervous, the immortal chi that had just appeared turned into a thin stream and flew straight to Yi Chun. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chun absorbed it. Seeing this, Empress Hari, Nana immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philos Aureus all loosened their clenched fists due to nervousness. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials who were standing near the outside also let out long sighs of relief. It would be best if Yi Chen could absorb the immortal stones. If he couldn't, then Yi Chen's advancement would be interrupted. No one present wanted to see such a situation. Time passed slowly. The 1,000,000 immortal stones that Yi Chen had given to Empress Hari and Nana shattered one by one. The speed was extremely fast. When the last middle-grade immortal stone was completely shattered, everyone present felt their hearts tighten. At this moment, Yi Chen, who was sitting cross-legged in midair, suddenly shone with golden light. Then, the light representing the 5 elements flashed across Yi Chen's body. At the same time, an extremely strong pressure suddenly appeared from Yi Chen's body. Then, with a boom, it soared into the sky. At this moment, the clouds above Samsara City suddenly boiled and then exploded. In the blink of an eye, they turned into huge ripples and rolled in all directions. At the same time, colorful flowers fell from the sky and fell directly on Samsara City. In the next second, the sound of great Tao sounded out of nowhere. Following the sound of great Tao, golden lotuses emerged from the ground and bloomed continuously in the Castellan's mansion. The strange phenomenon of golden lotuses emerging from the ground and flowers falling from the sky instantly attracted Empress Hari and Nana's attention. At the moment when the crowd was filled with confusion and nervousness, a smile appeared on fierce Emperor Nanan's face. Suddenly, tears began to flow from her eyes. Tears of joy were the state of Empress Hari and Nana at this moment. In the next second, Empress Hari and Nana looked at the women and Yi Chen's subordinates and said, "My husband, the breakthrough is successful." As soon as Empress Hari and Nana finished speaking, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philos Aureus all breathed a sigh of relief. Then, they couldn't help but cover their faces and cry. As for Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, Mi Zhu, and the other generals and officials, their tense expressions immediately relaxed. Then, they couldn't help but smile ecstatically. Time passed little by little. The phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky and golden lotuses emerging from the ground continued. 2 hours later, the phenomenon ended and Yi Chen opened his eyes. At this moment, the light of the 5 elements cycle shot out from Yi Chen's eyes. However, he immediately calmed down. The 5 elements' divine body had successfully evolved. Why did I go offline? Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the system notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully evolving the 5 elements' divine body. Special reward to player Yi Chen. Innate attribute points x 10,000. As soon as the system's notification ended, the girls' excited shouts could be heard. Husband! When Yi Chen heard this, he immediately looked at the women. When Yi Chen saw the tears hanging from the corners of their eyes, his heart ached. At this moment, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Guojia, Pang Tong, Mi Zhu, and the other generals and officials, all knelt on one knee in front of Yi Chen and bowed loudly. Congratulations, my lord, for successfully evolving. There weren't many generals and officials, but their loud cheers could be heard throughout the entire reincarnation city. As soon as the generals and officials finished speaking, the sound of kneeling on one knee could be heard. Boom! In the next second, the 41 million soldiers of the reincarnation immortal city, as well as Zhou Tsang and the soldiers on the city wall, knelt down on one knee in the direction of the Castellan's mansion and shouted at the top of their lungs. "Congratulations, my lord, for successfully evolving." Millions of people shouted at the top of their lungs, shaking the sky. In the settlement of the Beauty Alliance, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, Wang Mengmeng, and all the members of the Beauty Alliance who knew that Yi Chen was at a critical moment covered their faces and wept. Then, they bowed in the direction of the governor's mansion and said, "Congratulations, my lord, for successfully evolving." In the governor's mansion, the flaming tiger Yi Lin, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey Shao Jin, the tortoise with the Xuanwu bloodline, and the Black Emperor all bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Congratulations, my lord, for successfully evolving." Hearing the cheers from all over the reincarnation city, Yi Chen couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. Then, he looked directly at Empress Hari, Nana, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Mi Zhen and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Yi Chen had just completed his advancement. He didn't know why he had suddenly gone offline. However, when he saw that his subordinates and soldiers were all in the real world, and his women were all gathered outside the hall, how could he not know that something abnormal had happened when he had just completed his advancement? Moreover, it was an extremely dangerous situation. Otherwise, how could he and his 41 million soldiers come to the real world? Chapter 12-13. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the girls nodded in unison. "It's good that husband is fine. Waiting for a long time was the most torturous, but the considerate words after waiting were the most heartwarming." Yi Chen didn't know how to say sweet nothings, but Yi Chen's heartfelt concern and acknowledgement were what the women yearned for the most. Yi Chen smiled and landed on the ground. He looked at Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, and the other generals and officials. "Since you're all here, let's gather in this world today." "Yes, my lord." Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, and the other generals and officials smiled and bowed to Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and then looked at Zhao Yu. "Madam, instruct the maids who have received my inheritance to prepare a meal. If there aren't enough ingredients, send them back to the other world to prepare some solid dishes, such as whole beef or lamb, so that there won't be too many soldiers." Yi Chen was the supreme culinary sovereign and had 100 slots for his inheritance. Among them, apart from Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng from the Beauty Alliance, the other 97 slots had been passed down to the skillful maids that Yi Chen had specially selected from the city lord's residence. Their duty was to prepare the meal. Now that Yi Chen's subordinates had all come to the real world because of Yi Chen's advancement, Yi Chen naturally couldn't let them go back. In addition, Yi Chen had been fighting for a long time, so he rarely had time to eat and chat with his subordinate. Thus, he decided to invite all of his subordinates for a big meal today. "Yes, husband." When Zhao Yu heard this, she nodded her head and said. Then, she walked towards the back of the house. Yi Chen smiled and then turned to Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Guojia, Pang Tong, and Jia Su. "You guys take a seat first. I'll go take a shower and change my clothes." Yi Chen had just completed his advancement, so some of the impurities that he thought would never appear in his body had been expelled. Naturally, he had to take a bath. "Yes, my lord." Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, Pang Tong, and Jia Su bowed to Yi Chen. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. Then, he led the women to the back of the house. After Yi Chen and the women left, the bearded and tan Zhang Fei suddenly chuckled as he looked at the others and asked, "Ha ha ha, what are you doing? Have you heard of the maids who received milord's inheritance?" "Ida, what do you mean by that?" Gao Shun was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Zhang Fei grinned and said, "It's delicious. That day, I heard from my personal guard captain that his younger sister is one of the maids who received milord's inheritance. The food she makes, tsk, is simply delicious." "Really?" Guojia's eyes lit up and he hurriedly asked, "Really?" It was inevitable that a wine lover would not like good food. As the saying went, good wine paired with good food was a great joy in life. Otherwise, Guijia's eyes would not have lit up. When Zhang Fei heard Guijia's question, he glared at Guijia angrily and said, "That's right. Do you think I, Zhang Ida, would lie to you?" Okay. Brother Ida, Jia was wrong. Jia apologizes. Guijia smiled and cupped his fists at Zhang Fei. Zhang Fei rolled his eyes and said with a straight face, 10 bottles of wine. 10 bottles of 100 flowers wine, no, 8 bottles will do. Yes, 8 bottles. In your dreams. Guijia's face stiffened when he heard Zhang Fei's shameless words. He did not even think and directly refused. Zhang Fei was stunned when he heard this. He then shouted at Guijia, "Feng Feishue, you're not being kind. Feng Shao, you're unkind. You hurt me, yet you don't want to apologize with the 100 flowers wine. If you want the 100 flower wine, the sun will rise from the west," Guijia said without hesitation. Hearing those words, Zhang Fei suddenly laughed. Then, he put his arm around Guijia's shoulder and said, "I was planning to introduce you to the younger sister of my personal guards captain." Guijia rolled his eyes at Zhang Fei and said, "I don't believe her. Apart from her, there must be others. I'll know in a while. If there's anyone I like, I'll ask the Lord. If not, I'll send the betrothal gift. You, Guofeng Shao, you can't fight with me. If there's anyone to pick, I'll pick first. I'm the one who said it first." Zhang Fei glared and shouted. Kai Yong coughed a few times and said, "The Lord said that the two of you are in love. My Lord once said that in matters between a man and a woman, both parties must be in love with each other. You may like them, but that doesn't mean they will like you. Moreover, they are all people who have received my Lord's inheritance. Their status will definitely not be like ordinary maids who can be directly asked for or married." Drunkard Zhang Fei and drunkard Guijia were both stunned by Kai Yong's words. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Jia Su, and the other officials suppressed their laughter and walked toward the main hall. Guijia and Zhang Fei looked at each other and let out a long sigh. The smart Guijia and the impetuous Zhang Fei had not considered this because of the delicious taste. Now that Kai Yong had pointed it out, the two of them felt a headache coming on. However, they could only endure it. After all, the maids who had received Yi Chen's inheritance were different from ordinary maids in terms of status and status. To be more precise, their lord, Yi Chen, must have had a special purpose for passing down the culinary Tao to these maids. If they dared to ask for it or directly offer betrothal gifts, it would be embarrassing for their lord, Yi Chen. They didn't dare to do such a thing, and they wouldn't do it. Just as Guijiao and Zhang Fei finished sighing, Yi Chen's words were heard. "Those maidservants who have accepted my inheritance are all women from good families. Their backgrounds are clean, and the food they cook has different attribute. It is a benefit that I have given to the entire army. If you want them, you can't. If you want to marry them, you can. However, they are humans, and they have the right to choose. You cannot mess around." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Guijia and Zhang Fei's eyes lit up. They hurriedly bowed toward the back of the city lord's mansion. "Thank you, Lord." In the hall, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Jia Su, and the other generals and officials all had different expressions in their eyes when they heard Yi Chen's words. Among them, there were those whose eyes lit up, those who were stunned, and those who were as calm as Mount Tai. It was obvious that most of Yi Chen's unmarried subordinates were moved. As for those who were married, they were either afraid of their wives and did not dare to marry, or they wanted to marry but were hesitant. Chapter 12-14. In the back room of the city lord's mansion, Yi Chen, who had spread out his divine sense after hearing the conversation between Guijia and Zhang Fei, couldn't help but smile when he saw the expressions of his subordinates. There were quite a few of these fellows who wanted to start a family. That's good as well. Those maids who received the inheritance didn't have bad looks and good personalities. Their families didn't have any special background either. It wouldn't be bad to match them together. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guojia, Guanyu, Zhang Fei, and the other generals and ministers were all from the Three Kingdoms novice area. In the words of the players, they were all natives of the game world. However, the so-called natives were all living people with flesh, blood, and souls. They weren't NPCs. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that the people of the Three Kingdoms period were very particular about the 3 ways to be unfilial. When it came to marriage, it was very particular about matching the family's social status. Therefore, if Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Guojia wanted to get married, they had to find a woman who was worthy of their status. However, there weren't many such women in the entire Great Han Empire. After all, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, and Zhang Fei had all broken through to the Purple Mansion realm. They themselves had the ability to ascend to the great desolate world. Just this point alone made it so that not many people were worthy of them. In addition, they were all Yi Chen's trusted subordinates. Not to mention ordinary families, it was very difficult to find a woman who was worthy of them even in prestigious families. Of course, this wasn't the key point. The key point was that Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, and Zhang Fei were all capable subordinates of Yi Chen. Yi Chen couldn't let the women of the prestigious families of the Great Han Empire marry them. Otherwise, once Yi Chen's Samsara Empire was established, those so-called prestigious families would die because of Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, and Guojia. They would rise from the ashes. This didn't mean that Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, and Guan Yu would betray Yi Chen. Instead, it meant that those prestigious families might betray Yi Chen. Of course, for a long time, no family would dare to go against Yi Chen's orders, nor would they dare to reveal their ambitions. But as time passed, it would be a different story. After all, Yi Chen was going to ascend to the Eldritch world. In the Eldritch world, these prestigious families would become stronger because of the environment there. In addition, with their original reputation among the people, it wouldn't take long for them to become the prestigious families of the Samsara Empire again. In this way, Yi Chen's Samsara Empire might not be 100% corrupted because of this, but there was a certain probability. This could be easily seen from the fact that the Great Han Empire in the game was divided and the aristocratic families disobeyed the emperor's orders. Yi Chen didn't want to see such a thing happen. Therefore, Yi Chen never thought of marrying women from prestigious families to his subordinate. It was also for this reason that Yi Chen planned to wipe out all the prestigious families of the Great Han Empire when he conquered the world. To be more precise, as long as there was one person in these prestigious families with impure thoughts, Yi Chen wouldn't hesitate to eradicate this family. Whether it was cruel or cruel, Yi Chen wouldn't be soft-hearted in the slightest. After all, Yi Chen didn't want to see the country that he had worked so hard to build be corroded by a group of vermin. As for the fact that Yi Chen married De Qiao, Xiao Qiao, Zhen Mi, Huang Yueying, Mi Zhen and the other girls, they also belonged to the prestigious families of the Great Han Empire. It was impossible for them to go against Yi Chen's plan to wipe out the prestigious families. Although the families behind these girls belonged to prestigious families, these families had chosen to follow Yi Chen before Yi Chen rose up. They didn't follow Yi Chen after he had the ability to turn his hand over the clouds and turn his hand over the rain. Therefore, the families behind these girls were totally different from the prestigious families that Yi Chen wanted to wipe out. They couldn't be compared at all, and there was no need to compare them. When Yi Chen thought of this, Zhao Yu, who had gone to the backyard first to convey Yi Chen's order, walked over. "Husband, my sisters, let's bathe and change our husband's clothes together." As soon as Zhao Yu finished speaking, Empress Hari, Nana Diaochan, Kai Yen, Mi Zhen, Huang Yueying, Zhen Mi, De Qiao, and Philos Aureus all looked at Yi Chen in unison. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded after noticing the expectant gazes in the girl's eyes, then he said, "That's right." Okay, as soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the girls looked at each other and smiled. Then, they accompanied Yi Chen to the bathroom that was specially used for bathing. After taking a shower, Yi Chen leaned on Kai Yan and enjoyed the massage of the girls. Zhao Yu, who was leaning on Yi Chen's arms, suddenly remembered something. Then, she told him about how Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and all the soldiers of the reincarnation Immortal City had given the best spirit stones to Yi Chen. She also told him about how the flaming tiger Yi Lin, Yi Xiaoyu, and the other generals had gone out of the city to rob the spirit stones. After hearing this, Yi Chen sighed with emotion. He touched the hair of Zhao Yu and Empress Hari and Nana, who were leaning on his arms. Then, he looked at the girls and said, "Thank." Before Yi Chen could finish his words, Diaochan, who was swimming over, covered his mouth with her hand. "Husband, this is what we should do. Husband, please don't say thank you." When the girls heard this, they nodded in unison. Seeing this, Yi Chen could not help but feel warm in his heart. Then, he kissed Diaochan. Okay, I was wrong. I apologize." After being kissed by Yi Chen, Diaochan smiled sweetly and said, "That's right." As soon as Diaochan finished speaking, Zhao Yu suddenly thought of something. After hesitating for a while, she looked at Yi Chen and said, "Husband, the Beauty Alliance also collected some spirit stones for you. Although the amount is a little small, without the spirit stones they brought, I'm afraid that there will be a problem with your advancement this time." If she said what the Beauty Alliance did for Yi Chen, it would raise the status of the Beauty Alliance in Yi Chen's heart. It would be inappropriate if she did not say it. And this was the reason why Zhao Yu was hesitant just now. This had nothing to do with selfishness. After all, the members of the Beauty Alliance were all players, and the natives in the novice area of the Three Kingdoms didn't think highly of players. Of course, Yi Chen was an exception. When Yi Chen heard this, he was slightly taken aback. He did not expect the Beauty Alliance to take out spirit stones as well. Although it was a small amount, it helped him, otherwise, there was a high chance that his breakthrough would fail. This was the hardest thing to accept from a beauty. At this thought, Yi Chen let out a long sigh. "Husband, how should we deal with this?" When Kai Yan, who was using her body as a cushion, heard Yi Chen's sigh, she stroked Yi Chen's long hair and asked. Chapter 12-15. When Yi Chen heard Kai Yan's words, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he raised his head and leaned on Kai Yan's shoulder. "Does my wife have a good idea?" When Kai Yan heard this, she gently caressed Yi Chen's cheek and said, "Husband, Beauty Alliance has tens of thousands of women. I've specially observed them a while ago. They're all virgins. Why don't you take them as concubines?" When Yi Chen heard this, he was stunned. Yi Chen didn't expect Kai Yan's suggestion to be this. After coming back to his senses, Yi Chen shook his head helplessly and said, "If I had such intentions, I would have taken them as concubines. If I had such intentions, I would have taken them as concubines long ago. Why would I wait until now?" It wasn't that Yi Chen didn't know what the members of Beauty Alliance were thinking. He had already used his divine sense to scan the souls of all the members of Beauty Alliance. He knew exactly what they were thinking. But the problem was that Yi Chen didn't have any intention of making the women of Beauty Alliance his women. This wasn't to say that they weren't good. Compared to the majority of players, they were unbelievably good. Moreover, all of them had Yi Chen in their hearts and were loyal to Yi Chen. It was an exaggeration, but it was the truth. Otherwise, they wouldn't have resentment without enmity. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chen really didn't want to make the tens of thousands of female players of Beauty Alliance his women. Yi Chen was lustful, but he wouldn't act recklessly. Yi Chen liked beautiful women, but he wouldn't do it whenever he saw one. The female players of Beauty Alliance couldn't compare to Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and Nana in terms of looks. But in the real world, they were all goddess-like existences. If it was before the meteor crash and the primordial age of chaos, Yi Chen wouldn't be able to touch any of the women of Beauty Alliance. Logically speaking, this should have moved Yi Chen's heart. After all, that was his dream in the past. Unfortunately, Yi Chen was not tempted. The reason Yi Chen took the Beauty's Alliance as his slaves and allowed them to live in Samsara City was because he didn't want the women of the Beauty's Alliance to turn into demonic spirits and cause trouble for him and his subordinates after they died. The reason was that simple. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Empress Hari, Nana, Zhenmi, the five sisters, Big Qiao, and Philos Aureus all looked at each other and fell silent. Yi Chen, who sensed that the atmosphere was a little strange, was immediately taken aback when he saw this. Just when Yi Chen was a little confused, Zhao Yu flipped the hair on her temples and said, "Darling, I don't have a good impression of Beauty Alliance, but I'm a woman. I know why women are sad, and I also know what women suffer the most." When Zhao Yu said this, Diaochan bit her lip and then said, "Darling, although I don't like them very much, I can see from their eyes how deep their love for you is. Darling, although I don't want to share you with them, as time goes by, these women's best years will pass away because of you." Mi Zhen said after a moment of hesitation. Empress Hari and Nana, who were leaning on Yi Chen's right arm, tugged at Yi Chen's right hand and said seriously, "Darling, in my opinion, we should just kill them all and save them a lifetime of pain. Moreover, I think they're willing to be killed by you. If you don't want to do it, I can do it for you. I guarantee that their souls will be destroyed. If you refuse, then take them in, but they can't live with us." Kai Yan, Huang Yuang, Zhenmi, the five sisters, Big Qiao, and Philos Aureus all nodded seriously when they heard this. When Yi Chen saw this, the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily, and then he asked, "Is it possible that as long as someone likes me, your husband, I have to take her in?" "Of course not. Darling, you have the appearance of a human emperor. There are many people who like you. How can you take just anyone? If you want to take them in, they have to be good-looking and can help you," Philos Aureus said without hesitation when she heard this. Yi Chen was stunned when he heard this. Zhao Yu, Nana, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and the other girls all nodded seriously at this time. "I've lost to you, but let's talk about this later. At least, I'm not ready to be a stud horse." As soon as Yi Chen said this, the girls were all stunned and then said angrily, "Darling! Ahem, that was an example. Madams, please don't take it to heart," Yi Chen said with a smile. Just as he was about to get up, Diaochan hugged him and sat him down. "What the?" Yi Chen was stunned. At this moment, Diaochan said with a red face, "Darling, you're wrong. Husband, you said the wrong thing. You have to accompany me for a baby." Yi Chen wanted to say that the banquet was about to start and they could talk about it after the banquet. Unfortunately, when the words reached his mouth, he was blocked by Diaochan's persistent gaze. "Okay. I'll try my best." Yi Chen sighed deeply. After saying this, Diaochan kissed Yi Chen fiercely. Zhao Yu, Nana, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, and the other girls saw this and blushed. Then, they glared at Diaochan and got ready to get up and leave the bath. Yi Chen saw this and couldn't help but smile, then said, "Although I can only do one person at a time, you can all stay." "Darling," the moment the girls finished speaking, their faces flushed red. Then, Yi Chen restrained them in the pool. Of course, Yi Chen couldn't control Empress Hari and Nana, but Nana happened to be in Yi Chen's arms, so she couldn't escape even if she wanted to. Time passed little by little. Diaochan finally got what she wanted, and Yi Chen finished dressing under the help of the girls. Glancing at the girls who still had red on their faces, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't attend the banquet. You don't have to attend the banquet. Just have some food in the backyard." "Okay, darling." Zhao Yu, Nana, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, and the other girls blushed again and answered in unison. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled faintly and headed straight for the front residence. In the front house of the city lord's mansion in Samsara City. As soon as Yi Chen arrived, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, and Kai Yong, who were chatting happily, stopped and bowed to Yi Chen loudly. "Greetings, my lord." Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded with a smile, then went straight to the main seat and sat down. "Take your seat." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the others bowed in unison, then found their own seats and sat down. Seeing this, Yi Chen smiled slightly and said, "That's right. You have contributed greatly to my success this time. You should be rewarded." Chapter 12-16. After Yi Chen finished speaking, more than 20 crosses with storage abilities that he had snatched from the Luo denomination appeared and flew straight to Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guojia, Pang Tong, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and the other generals and officials. This time, Yi Chen's subordinates had taken out all the supreme-grade spirit stones that Yi Chen had rewarded them for their successful advancement. Yi Chen naturally had to give them something in return. As for Yi Chen's response, it was very simple and also very crude. Double the previous reward. After Yi Chen finished speaking, Zhang Fei, Dian Wei, Guojia, Pang Tong, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and the other generals and officials looked at each other and smiled. Then, they bowed to Yi Chen and said loudly, "Thank you, my lord." After they finished speaking, they each took the floating crosses in front of them and put them away. Yi Chen saw this and nodded with a smile. Then, he raised his cup and said, "Come, let's drink together. Come, everyone, let's drink this cup to celebrate our acquaintance." Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, and the other generals and officials felt warmth in their hearts when they heard this. Then, they raised their cups and shouted, "My lord, please." When Yi Chen heard this, he laughed and said, "All right." Then, he downed his cup in one gulp. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials downed their cups in one gulp. At this moment, Yi Chen put down his cup and looked at the maidservant who had just filled his cup. "Go and call the kitchen maids over. Let them meet the generals and military counselors." "Yes, you Lord Beach." The maidservant was slightly taken aback and hurriedly bowed. Then, she hurriedly left the hall. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the others looked at each other. Then, their expressions became awkward. Yi Chen, who was sitting at the head of the table, couldn't help but be taken aback. "These fellows, I just said that they could marry the kitchen maids as long as they were willing. Now, at this critical juncture, they are hesitating." At this thought, Yi glared at his subordinates and shouted, "Where is your spirit of fighting on the battlefield?" Upon hearing Yi Chen's words, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, Guojia, and the other generals and civil officials' faces stiffened. In the next second, Guojia said with a conflicted expression, "My lord, we will never be soft-hearted when fighting on the battlefield, but this." When Yi Chen heard Guojia's words, he glared at Guojia and shouted, "What are you talking about? You won't treat them as enemies. And no, that's not right. As long as you take a fancy to someone who also takes a fancy to you, then you can treat her as an enemy and conquer her." The moment Yi Chen finished speaking, the maidservants in the hall all blushed. Then, they all revealed envious gazes at the same time. Those who were sitting in the hall were Yi Chen's capable subordinate. Many women in the reincarnation Immortal City wanted to marry them. Of course, the young women in the reincarnation Immortal City wanted to marry Yi Chen the most. Unfortunately, it was more difficult than marrying Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, and the other generals and civil officials. It was impossible. Therefore, the women in the reincarnation Immortal City turned to the unmarried generals such as Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, and Pang Tong. Unfortunately, these great generals and military advisors could not even see each other on a normal day. How could they succeed? Now, Yi Yu of Gojoseon had started to arrange marriages. How could these maidservants not be envious? The maidservants blushed with envy. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other unmarried generals and civil officials were stunned. They did not expect their lord to say such simple and crude words. After coming to their senses, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, Guojia, and the other generals and civil officials blushed. Soon, they glared at the door and looked at it fiercely. Yi Chen was stunned by their ferocious eyes. Damn it, men who have never been in love are really scary. Thinking of this, Yi Chen said directly. Oh, that's right. Let me tell you first. The matchmaking this time is not forcing you. You must remember, if you want to freely fall in love and find a girl that you like, your lord, I, will absolutely not be dissatisfied, nor will I stop you. Do not make a decision that will make you depressed for the rest of your lives just because I, your lord, have pulled strings. Yi Chen was their lord. Although he could matchmake for his subordinates, he could not force them. Otherwise, it was hard to guarantee that they would not be depressed for the rest of their lives. After all, this was Yi Chen's order. They could not refuse and could only accept it. Yi Chen did not want to see such a situation occur. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have specially pointed it out. The moment Yi Chen said these words, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials were all stunned, and then they all felt a warmth in their hearts. A second later, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials all bowed to Yi Chen. Many thanks, Your Highness. When Yi Chen heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Not long after, the kitchen maids who had received Yi Chen's inheritance walked into the hall one by one. Then, they all shivered at the same time. There was nothing to be done about it. The gazes of Yi Chen's unmarried subordinates were practically eating people. After a brief moment of trembling, the 97 kitchen maids hastily bowed to Yi Chen. We pay respects to Lord Yu of Beech. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and said, I called you all here to summon the generals and advisors. I called you here so that you can meet the generals and military counselors. You can take a look. If you don't object, I will marry you to the generals and military counselors. Of course, the quota is limited. The kitchen maids were all stunned by Yi Chen's words, and then their eyes brightened. Only now did they realize why Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Guojia had such eating people gazes when they first entered. After coming to their senses, the kitchen maids hastily bowed to Yi Chen. Many thanks, Lord Yu of Beech. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded. He then looked at his subordinates and said, Take a look and see if there are any that you like. If there are, as long as they have no objections, this matter is settled. Yes, Your Excellency. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Gan Ning, and the other generals and officials all bowed and then turned to the kitchen maids. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yi Chen's unmarried subordinates all got up and walked over to the kitchen maids. Not long after, each of them held the hands of the kitchen maids that they had chosen and sat back down behind the table. The kitchen maids who had been chosen were both delighted and embarrassed, while the kitchen maids who had not been chosen were all disappointed. Yi Chen coughed a few times and then said, Men and women should be married. Men should get married when they are of age, and women should get married when they are of age. This prince will choose an auspicious day to preside over your wedding. Many thanks, Your Excellency. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Li Yuanba, and Guojia all smiled and then bowed to Yi Chen. Chapter 12-17. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded. Then he looked directly at the kitchen maids in the hall, who were full of disappointment, and said, You don't have to be sad because of this. Love between men and women is the most important thing. When you find a good match in the future, I promise you that I will make a match for you, let you get married in a grand way, and preside over the wedding for you. The kitchen maids who accepted Yi Chen's inheritance all had special abilities. They could speed up the cultivation of the soldiers who ate the food they cooked, or gain other benefits. Yi Chen naturally could not treat these kitchen maids as ordinary kitchen maids. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not make such a promise. Hearing this, the kitchen maids who were not chosen were all stunned. Then the disappointment on their faces disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, they were filled with excitement. In the next second, the kitchen maids bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency Yu Beach." To be promised by Yi Chen and to be the matchmaker, they were also promised to get married in a grand way. Moreover, the wedding would be presided over by Yi Chen himself. It was a great gift and a supreme honor. Others could not get it even if they wanted it. How could they not be happy? It should be known that the women in the reincarnation Immortal City who wanted to marry Yi Chen's soldiers had to fight for it. As for the kitchen maids, they did not need to fight for anything at all. They just needed to wait. Because their lord, Yi Chen, had promised them, they did not need to worry about it at all. Seeing the disappointment and excitement of the kitchen maids, Yi Chen smiled and said, "Remember, don't just wait and do nothing. Remember, don't just wait and do nothing because of my words, or take it as an order. If you meet a man you like, you can make the decision yourself. Don't regret it in the future." Yi Chen was domineering, ruthless, and cruel to his enemies. To his own people, Yi Chen would not be like that. After hearing Yi Chen's words, the kitchen maids felt warm in their hearts. Then they bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency Yu Beach." Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded and said, "Okay, let's go and prepare the food." "Alright, go and prepare to cook. Don't let the soldiers wait too long." "Yes, Your Excellency Yu Excellency Beach." Hearing this, the kitchen maids bowed again and then left the city lord's mansion, one after another. After looking at the kitchen maids leaving, Yi Chen looked at the kitchen maids who had been selected by his men and said, "Yi Chen, you've been chosen. Your Excellency, Your Excellency." At that time, Your Excellency, 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 Your excelled. Your Excellency, Your Excellency, Your Excellency, Your St. When the chosen women heard this, they were all stunned. Then, they hurriedly bowed to Yi Chen and said loudly. Yi Chen's words were very simple and crude. However, he was trying to tell the women one thing: the city lord's mansion was their maiden home. How could the female cooks not be touched and excited when they heard this? When Yi Chen heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Then, he looked at his subordinates, who looked a little embarrassed, and said, "Hand these cultivation methods over to your wives so that they can cultivate faster." After saying this, Yi Chen waved his right hand, and 10 some Xiantian cultivation methods appeared and flew over to Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, and the others. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, and the other generals and officials looked at each other and smiled. Then, they all bowed to Yi Chen. "Many thanks, Your Excellency." When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and looked at the maids standing to the side, ready to serve at any time. "Call in the musicians and dancers. Play the music and dance." "Yes, Lord Ghost King." When the maidservant heard this, she hurriedly bowed and responded. After she finished speaking, she hurriedly left the hall. When Yi Chen saw this, he picked up the wine jug and wine cup and looked at his subordinate. "Drink first. This king will go and see the soldiers." "Yes, Your Excellency." When Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials heard this, they all bowed to him. Hearing this, Yi Chen smiled faintly. Then, he left the hall and headed for the door. On the street of Samsara City, rows of tables were placed neatly on both sides of the street. The soldiers of Samsara Immortal City sat at a table with 8 people. They were laughing loudly and the atmosphere was very lively. The moment Yi Chen appeared, he was discovered by many soldiers. When they saw him, they were all stunned. They did not expect that their lord, Yi Chen, would come in person. After coming to their senses, the soldiers' eyes lit up. They hurriedly stood up and bowed to Yi Chen. "Greetings, Your Excellency." As soon as they finished speaking, the soldiers who hadn't noticed Yi Chen's arrival immediately stopped their discussions. This also caused the soldiers in the distance to quiet down and look over at Yi Chen. When the soldiers saw that Yi Chen had really come over, they were all involuntarily stunned. After that, they hurriedly got up and bowed to Yi Chen. "Greetings, Your Excellency." When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and nodded. Then, he flew up into the air. There were 41 million soldiers in Samsara Immortal City. There were so many of them that the entire Samsara city was filled. If Yi Chen walked all the way, he would not be tired, but it would be troublesome. When Yi Chen flew up into the air, the soldiers who were searching for Yi Chen because they heard the shouts looked up at the sky. Then, they hurriedly bowed to Yi Chen. "Greetings, Your Excellency." When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and nodded. Then, he raised the flagon in his left hand and poured a cup of wine into the cup in his right hand. "All of you have followed this king to the north and south. Your loyalty has made this king very gratified. This cup of wine is a toast to all of you." The moment Yi Chen's words fell, the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City were stunned. However, they did not expect that Yi Chen, the person who gave them a new lease on life, as well as supreme glory and their future lord, would actually take the initiative to drink with them. What was this? There was no doubt that this was a reward, a gift, and also an acknowledgement. To the soldiers at the bottom of the hierarchy, this was undoubtedly a great honor. Many years later, they could even tell their descendants about this matter. They could tell them that on that day, their lord, Yi Chen, personally came to drink with them. After a short moment of excitement, the soldiers of Samsara Immortal City raised their bowls filled with 100 flowers wine and shouted to Yi Chen in the sky. "To Your Excellency." At this moment the shouts of 41 million soldiers of Samsara Immortal City caused the air to buzz and reverberate endlessly. Yi Chen's toast was a gift. Although the soldiers liked it, no one dared to accept it. They had no choice. Yi Chen's status was obvious. No matter what, they could not accept it openly. When Yi Chen heard this, he could not help but smile. Then, he raised his right hand and made a grabbing motion. Whoosh! A big bowl flew out from the kitchen and was caught by Yi Chen. After pouring the 100 flowers wine into the cup, Yi Chen poured the wine from the flagon in his left hand into the big bowl. When the soldiers on the ground saw Yi Chen's action, their eyes lit up and their faces were filled with smiles. In the next second, Yi Chen raised his bowl and looked at the soldiers as he yelled, "Cheers!" Chapter 12-18. The soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City burst out laughing upon hearing this. They then said in unison, "Cheers!" After the soldiers finished speaking, they downed the 100 flowers wine in their bowls without hesitation. When Yi Chen saw this, he smiled faintly and finished the 100 flower wine in one gulp. Yi Chen wiped away the wine at the corner of his mouth. Then, he looked at the soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City and shouted, "All of you have contributed greatly to my success in advancing to the next level. You must be rewarded." Yi Chen naturally knew that his subordinates were willing to give up everything for him. However, even though he knew, he could not reward them. After all, it was the rule of the emperor to reward those who did well and punish those who did wrong. Yi Chen did not want to break this rule. Of course, Yi Chen was not a greedy and selfish person. After Yi Chen finished speaking, a large number of supreme spiritual stones appeared in the sky and flew toward the soldiers. Yi Chen took out a lot of supreme spiritual stones. If Yi Chen had not earned a lot of supreme spiritual stones from the World War, he would not have been able to take out so many supreme spiritual stones. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chen was giving the soldiers twice as many top-grade spirit stones as they originally had. Moreover, it would only be more, not less. The soldiers were stunned when they saw Yi Chen's generous reward. They did not expect that their lord, Yi Chen, would give them so many supreme spiritual stones. What was this? There was no doubt that this was a gift. After coming to their senses, the soldiers of the reincarnation immortal city bowed to Yi Chen and said loudly, "Thank you, Lord, for your gift." Yi Chen nodded with a smile and said, "Today, let's drink to the fullest. Today, let's drink to our heart's content and not return until we're drunk." "Yes, Lord." When the soldiers of reincarnation immortal city heard this, their eyes lit up. Then, they bowed and greeted Yi Chen loudly. Hearing this, Yi Chen smiled and looked toward the Beauties Alliance's settlement. "These women forget it, I'll make a trip there." Thinking up to this point, Yi Chen flew straight to the residence of the Beauty Alliance's leader, Li Mengyao. In the next second, Yi Chen landed on the ground and appeared in the courtyard of Li Mengyao's house. At this moment, a joyful shout could be heard. "Mas. Yes, Master. Master is here." Wang Mengmeng. Yi Chen couldn't help but smile when he heard the voice. At this moment, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng rushed out of the room. "Master." As soon as Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng finished speaking, Yi Chen swallowed the words he wanted to say. Beauty's favor was the hardest to bear. The ancients were right. Thinking up to this point, Yi Chen looked at the three women with a complicated expression and said, "I'm here to thank you. I'm here to thank you all. Without your spirit stones, I'm afraid that my breakthrough this time would have been a problem. Master, this is what we should do." Li Mengyao's face turned pale when she heard this. "Then," she said resentfully. Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mengmeng nodded solemnly at Li Mengyao's words. Yi Chen was silent for a moment. Then, he said, "I've been thinking about it recently. I think it's best to let go. This way you can choose a new life, and I'll give you freedom." When Yi Chen was bathing, he understood one thing from the persuasion of Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and Nana. Although he could continue to have the Beauties' Alliance, if he didn't, it would be equivalent to wasting the lives of these women. This was completely in conflict with Yi Chen's original plan of only treating these women as subordinate. Yi Chen wasn't a good person, but Yi Chen wasn't a bad person either. If the Beauties' Alliance showed even the slightest bit of hostility toward him, Yi Chen would be ruthless enough to kill them all. The problem was, these women were all in love with Yi Chen and didn't have the slightest bit of hostility. Therefore, even if Yi Chen had all kinds of tricks up his sleeve, he couldn't do anything to the Beauties' Alliance. It was for these reasons that Yi Chen said to give freedom to the Beauties' Alliance. It couldn't be helped. It was fine if it was only for a short time, but in the long run, these women would definitely lose their lives because of Yi Chen. Yi Chen didn't want to see this happen. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng were all taken aback by Yi Chen's words. They hadn't expected Yi Chen to say that. After a short pause, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng's expressions changed. "Master, we won't go. Don't chase us away." The three women's voices were filled with fear. It was obvious that they didn't want to leave Yi Chen, much less obtain any freedom. When Yi Chen heard that the three women were on the verge of crying, he couldn't help but frown and then said, "Why bother? Why bother?" Wang Mingming's tears began to fall when she heard this. "We don't want a new life. We're willing to follow Master. Master, please don't chase us away." Wang Mingming's sobbing words caused Hu Xiaoye's heart to beat violently due to her misery. Then she said seriously, "If Master doesn't want us to leave, we won't leave. If Master really doesn't want us anymore, we won't leave. Even if Master wants to kill us, we won't leave." Li Mengyao, who was at the side, heard this and pinched her arm hard, trying hard not to cry. Li Mengyao looked straight at Yi Chen and said in a trembling voice, "Master, you don't have to worry about our future. Even if we can't become Master's women in our lifetime, it doesn't matter. As long as we can accompany Master, we'll be satisfied." Yi Chen fell silent when he heard this. Yi Chen knew what the members of the Beauties Alliance were thinking, but Yi Chen didn't expect that his solution wouldn't have any effect at all. Sure enough, the Beauties Alliance, which had no enmity and would turn into demonic spirits after death, was terrifyingly determined, but Yi Chen couldn't help but sigh at this thought. He looked at Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng and asked, "Are you sure you won't regret it? Even if I can only see you once in a long time, you won't regret it?" Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng were all stunned when they heard this. When they came back to their senses and realized the hidden meaning behind Yi Chen's words, they immediately opened their eyes wide and shouted in ecstasy, "Brother Yi Chen, you're a genius. We won't regret it. Let's go in." Yi Chen nodded and said. After that, he walked towards Li Mengyao's house. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng were all stunned when they saw this. Then, their faces turned red. Chapter 12-19. They liked Yi Chen and wanted to be Yi Chen's women, but all of this happened too quickly. How could they not be shy? After all, they were all inexperienced, especially Wang Mengmeng, who was still a little girl. It would be strange if they weren't shy. After a short moment of confusion, Li Mengyao was the first to come back to her senses and walked straight into the house. Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mengmeng looked at each other and hurriedly followed her in. Not long after 3 soft cries, the 3 leaders of Beauty's Alliance turned into mature women one after another. After a round of lovemaking, 2 hours had passed. The blushing Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng gave Yi Chen a long kiss one after another. This was something they had longed for a long time, but they didn't expect that before this, they would become Yi Chen's women. After sensing the 3 women's intentions, Yi Chen couldn't help but smile and say, "I hope you don't regret it. There are more than 10,000 women in Beauty's Alliance. I don't know how long it'll be before it's your turn again." Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng looked at each other and smiled. They said in unison, "Master, we've already talked about this in private." What did they say? Yi Chen was slightly taken aback and asked. Li Mengyao blushed and said in a low voice, "Everyone together. Anyway, Master is amazing. I think it'll be no problem to do hundreds or thousands at once." When Yi Chen heard Li Mengyao's open words, he couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at Li Mengyao and asked, "How do you know it'll be no problem for me to do hundreds or thousands at once?" "Master, you didn't. Li Mengyao blushed and said, but she couldn't say the last few words in the end. Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mengmeng lowered their heads, not daring to look at Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at the 3 women and said emotionally, "As expected, women in the real world are more open-minded and no more, Master." Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng all blushed upon hearing this. "Ahem, well, the 3 of you don't have to call me Master anymore. I'll remove the slave contract for you now." Yi Chen laughed awkwardly when he heard this. "Don't!" Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng shouted in unison. "Why?" When Yi Chen heard this, he looked at the 3 women in confusion and asked. Hearing Yi Chen's question, the 3 women looked at each other and smiled. "In order to continue staying by Master's side." When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but stare blankly. Then, he realized that Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng knew that Yi Chen didn't like players, so they purposely left restrictions for themselves so that Yi Chen wouldn't have any worries. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's frozen heart couldn't help but warm up a little. "Alright, but you can change the way you address me." When Yi Chen said this, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng laughed again and shook their heads. "No, if we change it, Master will lose some special fun." "You!" Yi Chen said in a daze. The corner of his mouth twitched involuntarily, and he slapped Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng's buttocks. After 3 slaps, Yi Chen said, "There are a lot of women in this world. Looks like there are quite a few Fujoshis among you. Otherwise, how would you know about this? Does Master like it?" Li Mengyao asked with a red face. Yes, it's all right, but it's fine once in a while. If it's like this for a long time, it'll get boring, Yi Chen said with a chuckle. When Li Mengyao heard this, she nodded and said, Master, Mengyao will remember. When Yi Chen heard this, he patted Li Mengyao's back and said, Remember, don't humiliate yourselves. Even more so, don't do things you don't like just to cater to me and please me. This isn't what I want. When Yi Chen said this, the three women felt a warmth in their hearts. Then, they called out in unison, Master. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but smile and shout, Contract rescind. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the sound of the great Tao resounded in the air. Then, a red dot of light suddenly appeared on Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mingming's foreheads. Then, with a pop sound, they exploded in the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the same thing happened to the other members of the Beauties Alliance. When Yi Chen saw this, he smiled and looked at the panicking Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mingming. Go comfort the other members of the Beauties Alliance. Remember what I said. Unless you like it, don't cater to me. The matter between men and women is about mutual affection. When Yi Chen said this, he suddenly paused. He remembered that although he didn't dislike Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mingming, he didn't like them that much either. After a brief moment of awkwardness, Yi Chen coughed and said, In short, don't humiliate yourselves. Of course, don't be jealous of Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Kai Yan just because you're my women. Don't do anything to stir up trouble. I don't like to see such things. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Yi Chen's words were a bit cold. It felt like Yi Chen didn't recognize anyone after pulling up his pants, but he still said it. It couldn't be helped. Restlessness in the harem was a big taboo. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, Wang Mingming, and the other members of the Beauties Alliance were all people of the real world. In terms of ideology, they were very different from women like Diaochan, Kai Yan, and Zhao Yu. If Yi Chen didn't specifically point this out, something like this might happen. Of course, the probability was close to zero. After all, the tens of thousands of women in the Beauties Alliance were willing to serve Yi Chen. How could they compete with the main wives like Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Kai Yan? However, even so, Yi Chen still had to specifically point it out to prevent trouble in the harem. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Hu Xiaoye looked at Yi Chen resentfully and said, We won't do that. We won't do that. We don't want Master to be angry because of this. When Yi Chen heard this, he laughed awkwardly. At this moment, Li Mengyao and Wang Mingming looked at each other and bent down. At this moment, Yi Chen suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air, and then hurriedly stopped him. The banquet is about to end. Let's talk about it tonight. Okay. Li Mengyao and Wang Mingming blushed when they heard this. They let go of the fierce little Yi Chen and raised their heads. Chapter 12:20. Hearing this, Yi Chen touched Li Mengyao and Wang Mingming's heads and got up. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mingming hurriedly helped Yi Chen get dressed. After 10 minutes, Yi Chen was dressed. He glanced at the three girls, smiled, and left Li Mengyao's residence. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mingming looked at Yi Chen's back, smiled at each other, and then hugged each other. That's great. Master has finally accepted us. Hearing Wang Mingming's tearful words, Li Mengyao hugged the two girls' arms tightly and said, At this time, we should be happy, not crying. Yes, we should be happy, we should laugh, but we can't stop the tears. Hu Xiaoye forced a smile, and then showed a smile that was uglier than crying. Hearing this, Li Mengyao took a deep breath and said, Okay, let's get ready. All right, let's hurry up and pack up. Master might come over tonight. We have to tell the sisters about this joyous occasion. We have to tell them that our long wait didn't end in failure. We have to tell them that our wish will come true. We can be with Master forever, okay? Hu Xiaoye and Wang Mingming both nodded and said, Okay. On the street of Samsara City, Yi Chen, who had left Li Mengyao's residence, looked back and heaved a long sigh. A group of silly women, forget it, don't think about it. Since I've accepted them, I'll treat them better in the future. Thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Yi Chen had no choice. He had never thought that one day he would really accept the Beauty Alliance. But since he had accepted them, Yi Chen would not really treat them as playthings. If he wanted to have a taste, he would find them to vent. Fortunately, I've cultivated the 9 revolutions mysterious art. Otherwise, I would be so tired because of this that my heart would tremble at the sight of women. However, he still had to try his best to get a set of top cultivation methods. Otherwise, when he was free, he would do this every day. 1 or 2 years would be fine, but after a long time, he might not be able to bear it. The banquet should be over. He should go and show his face first. Otherwise, who knew what his subordinates would think? Thinking of this, Yi Chen directly rose into the air and flew straight to the castellan's residence. As soon as Yi Chen arrived at the main hall of the city lord's mansion, his subordinates, who were almost done with their meals, and the chefs who had been selected immediately stopped eating and bowed toward Yi Chen. "Greetings, my lord." When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "That's right. After the banquet, return to that world as soon as possible and pay close attention to Luoyang's movement." "Yes, my lord." Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, Chen Kun, and the other generals and ministers bowed in unison. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded his head and raised his cup. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and ministers raised their wine cups in unison. "To my lord." When Yi Chen heard this, he chuckled and nodded his head. After that, he drained the cup of wine in one gulp. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and ministers hurriedly drained their cups. Yi Chen smiled and said, "All of you, please continue. Do not wait for this king." After saying this, he left the hall and headed for the rear residence. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Guojia, Pang Tong, and the other generals and ministers looked at each other and nodded in unison. In the next second, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and the other generals and ministers stood up and walked out. Before long, the order to return to the game world was given to the entire army. After 10 minutes, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Guojia, Pang Tong, Jia Su, and the other generals and ministers, as well as the 2.41 million soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City, disappeared in droves. The maids from the game world began to clean up the tables, chairs, and cutlery. In the rear residence of the Castellan's mansion in Reincarnation City. When Yi Chen returned, Nana was the first to see Yi Chen. She blushed and lowered her head, not daring to look at Yi Chen. Yi Chen was taken aback when he noticed this. "What's going on?" While Yi Chen was still in a daze, Zhao Yu came to Yi Chen's side, bit her lip, and said, "Husband, actually, my sisters also know the art of sex. But they are too shy." When Yi Chen heard this, he was stunned once again. Then, he was stunned. Damn! Could it be that Nana's divine sense detected it when he slept with Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng? That should be it. Otherwise, why would Nana blush and lower her head when I entered the room? When he thought of this, the corners of Yi Chen's mouth involuntarily twitched as his heart tightened. Yi Chen realized that Zhao Yu had suddenly mustered up her courage to say this because she was afraid that he would be seduced away by the women of the Beauty's Alliance. If he didn't accompany them for a long time, he would distance himself from them or even ignore them. At this thought, Yi Chen pulled Zhao Yu into his arms and said seriously, "My wife and I are acquainted with each other. Madam and I met at the beginning, and you're my first wife. I won't forget this. So, madam, don't let your imagination run wild because of this. I'm not someone who likes the new and hates the old." Zhao Yu's heart trembled when she heard this. She hugged Yi Chen tightly and replied emotionally. Yi Chen lowered his head and kissed Zhao Yu's forehead. Then he looked at Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Empress Hari, Nana, Zhen Mi, the 5 sisters, as well as Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philostes Aureus. My wives are the same. Don't let this disturb your state of mind, especially Nana. Although you just became my woman not long ago, we are. Yi Chen suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of danger. Sensing this, Yi Chen hurriedly shut his mouth. In short, Nana, you and I are destined to be together forever. No one can break us apart. Empress Hari and Nana looked deeply at Yi Chen and replied sweetly, Yi Chen smiled when he heard this. At this moment, Diaochan came to Yi Chen's side and said, Husband, it's time to take a bath. When Yi Chen heard this, he could not help but be stunned. Then, he realized that he had not taken a shower yet because he had been messing around with Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's face froze and he glared at Nan Nan. Empress Hari and Nana blushed when they saw Yi Chen's gaze. Then, they quickly lowered their head. Yi Chen's mouth twitched when he saw Empress Hari and Nana's expression. If it were Zhao Yu, Diaochan, or Kai Yan, they would not casually use their divine sense to investigate. Only Nana dared to do this. Yi Chen shook his head helplessly and said, Let's go. Let's take a bath together. Chapter 12:21. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Nana, Huang Yueying, Zhen Mi, the 5 sisters, as well as Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philostes Aureus, looked at each other, and then responded in unison. Hearing this, Yi Chen suddenly felt a sense of happiness is coming in his heart. After a slight pause, Yi Chen could not help but smile, and then led the girls to the bathroom to take a bath. After a bath, Qin Yu and the girls returned to the room. Sure enough, not long after, what Yi Chen had thought before became a reality. For a time, all kinds of enjoyment appeared on Yi Chen's body. It was not until 6 hours later that Yi Chen gave Empress Hari and Nana the final blow that the battle ended. Yi Chen had decided to give equal treatment early on, so every time when there was a possibility of creating a new life, Yi Chen would not choose the same person. To be more precise, he would do it together, but not only would he give it to one person, the girls would take turns. Of course, this was currently limited to Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Nana, Mi Zhen, Kai Yan, and the other girls. After a period of enjoyment, Yi Chen was served by the girls, dressed again, and gave Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Nana, Mi Zhen, and the other girls a long kiss. Only then did Yi Chen leave the back residence, and then went to Li Mengyao's residence. As soon as Yi Chen arrived, he saw a scene that made Yi Chen extremely shocked. The members of the Beauty Alliance were all wearing semi-transparent silk gauze, and their faces were blushing as they waited in Li Mengyao's courtyard. Of course, it was impossible for all of the Beauty Alliance's women to live here. There wasn't enough space. But the problem was that their residences were all connected by arches, so they could easily visit each other. At this very moment, all of the women of the Beauties Alliance were dressed like this. Furthermore, their faces were all red, and their eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement. Damn, these women, could it be that each and every one of them is waiting to give me? As Yi Chen thought of this, the female players of Beauties Alliance noticed Yi Chen's arrival. They all looked at Yi Chen and shouted, Yi Chen, Master. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded and walked towards Li Mengyao's house. As soon as they entered, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng, who were wearing clothes that were more revealing than bikinis, came forward. Master, do you want to eat now? When Yi Chen heard this, his heart couldn't help but sway. Damn, these women, if they were to focus on this, they would really do one thing after another. They are even better at it than a man like me. Thinking of this, Yi Chen sighed inwardly and then nodded. Let's begin. The tens of thousands of women of Beauty's Alliance suddenly acted this way because they wanted to immediately become Yi Chen's women. They didn't want to wait any longer. Otherwise, who knew what would happen? Yi Chen naturally noticed this. Although Yi Chen wanted to stop them from doing this, in the end, Yi Chen gave up on this idea. After all, they had waited for so long and were filled with anticipation. Moreover, Yi Chen already planned to take them, so there was no need to stop them. Moreover, this was also a kind of enjoyment. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng looked at each other and smiled. Then, they helped Yi Chen undress. After putting away all of his clothes, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng knelt down and began to serve little Yi Chen. Before long, the murderous little Yi Chen raised the flag of rebellion. "Master, please wait a moment," Li Mengyao said, and then went to the door and made a hand gesture. Seeing this, the eyes of the female players of Beauty's alliance lit up. Even though the world had changed for a long time, the girl at the front of the line still had the body of a model and exuded the aura of a model. Then, she entered the room. Within a few seconds, with a muffled groan, the model became mature. Then, a melon would fall when ripe. The most puzzling thing was that after only a few times, the model's arms and legs straightened and then tensed up. This kind of state would only appear after reaching a certain state. Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng were dumbfounded. After confirming that the weak electric current could achieve this effect, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng and said, "Help her down and continue." "Yes, master." Hearing this, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng immediately came back to their senses and hurriedly responded. Then, they went out to call for help. Within a few seconds, another female player of Beauty's alliance entered. Just like before, after only a few times, this female player of Beauty's alliance entered a state where her arms and legs straightened and her body tensed up and trembled. Time slowly passed, and the female players of Beauty's alliance entered the room one by one. They all turned from raw melons to mature melons and were finally carried out. 6 hours later, the tens of thousands of women of Beauty's alliance were all dealt with by Yi Chen. In the end, only Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng were left. Looking at the murderous little Yi Chen, Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng's hearts trembled for no reason. It was too cruel. For 6 hours, they did not surrender at all. Seeing the expressions of the three women, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he pulled the three women and repeated the previous actions. After 10 minutes, Yi Chen let out a long sigh. It wouldn't do if he didn't release it all the time, so Yi Chen released it. Wang Mengmeng, who had obtained Yi Chen's life essence, immediately cried out in excitement. "Master, stay here. Don't come out. I beg you." Hearing this, Yi Chen couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he touched Wang Mengmeng's sweaty forehead and asked, "It depends on the time." "That depends on the time. Haven't you attended a physiological class before? Today isn't the safe day." "I can do it. I definitely can," Wang Mengmeng hurriedly said. When Yi Chen heard this, he was stunned once again. Then, he said, "All right, stay a little longer. However, don't get your hopes up." Yi Chen, Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Nana, Huang Yueying, Zhenmi, the 5 sisters, as well as Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philos Aureus, had worked hard. However, none of the women had gotten pregnant. As for why they hadn't gotten pregnant, it naturally had to do with Yi Chen's cultivation realm and his physical body being too strong. It was also for this reason that Yi Chen said this. Hearing this, Wang Mengmeng nodded and said, "This kind of opportunity is rare. This time, no matter what, I have to seize it and bear a baby for master." When Li Mengyao and Hu Xiaoye heard this, they exchanged glances with each other, then looked at Yi Chen in unison. "Master, when you come out, love us again." Hearing this, Yi Chen was stunned for a moment. Then, he realized what the two women meant. Damn, they even want the remnant seed. Thinking of this, Yi Chen nodded and said, "All right. All right." Chapter 12:22. As soon as Yi Chen said this, Hu Xiaoye and Li Mengyao's eyes lit up. Yi Chen shook his head helplessly when he saw the two girls' expressions. Yi Chen didn't mind letting the women of the Beauty Alliance get pregnant. After all, he had already decided to accept them, so there was no need to stop them. Time slowly passed. Little Yi Chen left under Wang Mingming's reluctant gaze. Hu Xiaoye and Li Mengyao hurriedly caught him. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yi Chen glanced at the three women, who were using the quilt to prop up their legs, and said, "I'm going to the game world. If you have time, come online as well. The Dongzhuo Rebellion is about to start. When the time comes, there will be many quests. You can go and do them. Try to get as many benefits as possible before you ascend. But don't force yourself." "Yes, master. Wait for half an hour and we'll come online," Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng replied in unison. Yi Chen glanced at the three women and said, "All right. You guys go ahead. Take a rest." When Li Mengyao, Hu Xiaoye, and Wang Mengmeng heard this, their raised legs tensed up unnaturally and their faces turned red. Seeing this, Yi Chen smiled and left the room. It was basically impossible for the three women to get pregnant with Yi Chen's child. Their physical bodies were much weaker than Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, and Mi Zhen. Moreover, their realms were 2 realms lower. Even Zhao Yu, Diaochan, and Kai Yan hadn't gotten pregnant yet. It was even more impossible for the three women. This didn't mean that Yi Chen couldn't get women pregnant or that there was something wrong with his body. It was because this was one of the effects of stepping onto the path of cultivation. Otherwise, the existence of the great desolate world would not have needed hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years of hard work to produce a descendant. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that in order to conceive Yi Chen's child, her cultivation couldn't be too much lower than Yi Chen's, and her body couldn't be too weak either. If one had to say who was most likely to be pregnant with Yi Chen's child, it would be Empress Hari and Nana. Other than Nana, it would be Zhao Yu, Diaochan, Kai Yan, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhenmi, the 5 sisters, as well as Big Qiao, Little Qiao, and Philostes Aureus. In the main hall of the City Lord's mansion in Samsara City. The moment Yi Chen entered, Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, who had appeared in the hall at some point, stood up and looked at Yi Chen. "Big brother," as soon as Flaming Tiger Yi Lin finished speaking, her nose couldn't help but sniff. In the next second, Flaming Tiger Yi Lin said curiously, "Big brother seems to have a strange smell on him." "Ahem. Well, cultivate well." After Yi Chen finished speaking, he smiled sheepishly. With a thought, a stream of water appeared out of thin air. After washing Yi Chen's body, it flew straight out of the City Lord's mansion. When Flaming Tiger Yi Lin saw this, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she nodded. "Okay, I'll cultivate well, big brother." When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded. At this moment, Yi Chen suddenly thought of something. With a thought, 5 crosses with storage functions instantly appeared and flew straight to Flaming Tiger Yi Lin. "It's all thanks to you that I was able to advance successfully this time. Take these crosses and distribute them to Little Fish, Little Turtle, Little Gold, and Black Emperor." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Flaming Tiger Yi Lin couldn't help but smile. Then, she said, "Big brother, this is what we should do." When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. Then, he stroked Flaming Tiger Yi Lin's little head and said, Okay. Remember to distribute them. Also, it won't be long before you can return to that world and ascend with me. When that time comes, you won't have to stay in this world every day." Flaming Tiger Yi Lin was responsible for guarding the road back to the city in the real world and protecting Yi Chen's physical body. When Yi Chen ascended, Flaming Tiger Yi Lin had to return to the game world and ascend with Yi Chen to ensure that they would be in the same place after ascending. Otherwise, if Flaming Tiger Yi Lin ascended by herself, no one knew where she would go. When that time came, it would be difficult for Yi Chen to find Flaming Tiger Yi Lin again. After all, the Eldritch world was too big. Even if Flaming Tiger Yilin was Yi Chen's spiritual pet and had a telepathic connection with Yi Chen, it was useless. In this way, Flaming Tiger Yilin, who had ascended to the Eldritch world, could only be alone. At that time, any small demon could bully Flaming Tiger Yilin. Even if Flaming Tiger Yilin was a divine beast, it was useless. She could only be bullied because of her realm. Yi Chen didn't want to see such a situation. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have asked Flaming Tiger Yilin to ascend to the Eldritch world with him. As for Yi Chen saying that Flaming Tiger Yilin didn't have to stay in the real world for a long time, the reason wasn't complicated. Because after ascending, Yi Chen and Yi Chen's subordinates' realms would definitely soar rapidly. Under such circumstances, Yi Chen's subordinates would be enough to guard the Samsara city in the real world. There was no need for Flaming Tiger Yilin to stay in the real world. Moreover, if he didn't let Flaming Tiger Yilin follow him to the Eldritch world, it wouldn't be so easy for Flaming Tiger Yilin to improve her realm. In this way, Flaming Tiger Yilin's realm would soon be overtaken by the players. After that, Flaming Tiger Yilin wouldn't be able to do anything. Yi Chen didn't want to see such a situation. Therefore, Flaming Tiger Yilin had to ascend to the Eldritch world with Yi Chen and cultivate in the Eldritch world in the future. As soon as Yi Chen finished his words, Flaming Tiger Yilin's eyes lit up. Then, she nodded excitedly and replied, "Okay." Flaming Tiger Yilin naturally wasn't tired of protecting Yi Chen's physical body in the real world. Instead, she wanted to stay by Yi Chen's side and work for Yi Chen. If the real world was still dangerous and Yi Chen's physical body was still threatened, Flaming Tiger Yilin would at most ascend with Yi Chen and then return to the real world to guard the Samsara city. Of course, this was just a hypothesis. In fact, as long as Yi Chen ascended, regardless of whether it was Yi Chen or his subordinates, under the environment of the Eldritch world and the support of the Fate Dynasty, their realms would soar so fast that no players could catch up with them. Yi Chen couldn't help but smile when he heard this. After patting Flaming Tiger Yilin's little head, he went straight to the diamond-level game capsule. With a creak, the door of the diamond-level game capsule opened. Seeing this, Yi Chen took a step forward and directly lay down on the ground. At the same time, the door of the diamond-level game capsule closed. At the same time, Yi Chen closed his eyes. In the game world, Reincarnation Immortal City, in the main hall of the City Lord's mansion, a pillar of light suddenly appeared, and then Yi Chen appeared. At this moment, a world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for being the first to advance to the 5 Elements Divine Constitution. Player Yi Chen is rewarded with innate attribute points x 3000. Chapter 12:23. The world announcement was repeated 3 times, and the entire world channel exploded. F***CK. F***CK. What's going on? Didn't Yi Yu of Gojoseon achieve the 5 Elements spiritual body? How did he achieve the 5 Elements divine body in just half a day? Is it so easy to achieve an advancement in one's bone frame? It should be easy. Otherwise, why would Yi Yu of Gojoseon be advancing so quickly? Easy my ass. You can tell from the name that the 5 Elements spiritual body is of the same level. The 5 Elements divine body is obviously above the 5 Elements spiritual body. How can it be easy? I think so too. F***CK. If it was easy to achieve an advancement in one's bone frame, someone would have made a world announcement. Don't forget that every time Yi Yu of Gojoseon achieves an advancement in one's bone frame, there would be a world announcement. F***CK. Then why did Yi Yu of Gojoseon achieve the 5 Elements divine body so quickly? F***CK. Is there a need to ask? Don't forget who achieved the 5 Elements divine body. This is very normal, okay? Sigh, comparisons are odious. Yi Yu of Gojoseon is indeed the #1 player. Everything he does is so extraordinary, Stop right there. Let me interrupt. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, Dian Wei came to my territory to rob spiritual stones. Do you know about this? I have never done anything against you, and I have never thought of competing with you for hegemony. I swear. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, I was robbed here too. Zhao Yun robbed me and didn't leave a single spiritual stone for me. Can you return it to me? Let me say this first. I have never done anything against you. Since you have said it, then I will say it too. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, I was robbed too. I was robbed by a little girl, and I didn't dare to refuse. I don't want any explanation for this, and I don't have the guts to do so. I just want to ask if you can return me a portion of the spiritual stones that were stolen. Without spiritual stones, the speed of improvement is too slow. F***CK, what's going on? How did it suddenly become a grievance gathering? How would I know? But it seems like Yi Yu of Gojoseon has made a move in the real world. They are Yi Yu of Gojoseon's subordinates, not Yi Yu of Gojoseon. If Yi Yu of Gojoseon were to make a move, these people would have died long ago. Don't forget, it's fine if Yi Yu of Gojoseon doesn't make a move, but once he does, blood will flow like a river. The world channel was in an uproar. When Yi Chen saw it, he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect that the players who had been robbed by Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, Treasure Hunter Fish Yi Xiaoyu, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and the others would suddenly complain in the world channel. After coming back to his senses, Yi Chen thought of something and directly said something on the world channel. Previously, the situation was urgent. Please forgive me if I offended you in any way. In addition, in 10 minutes, those who provided the spirit stones are to gather at the right north of Ping County and report the amount of spirit stones. I will return it to you one by one. Remember not to report it. Otherwise, die. Yi Chen's apology and his words were filled with murderous intent. As soon as he finished speaking, the originally lively world channel instantly boiled over with excitement. F***CK. What did I just see? Yi Yu of Gojoseon. It was Yi Yu of Gojoseon who spoke. F***CK. I didn't expect Yi Yu of Gojoseon to really speak and even admit to it. What do you mean admit to it? F***CK. Didn't you hear what Yi Yu of Gojoseon said? The situation was urgent. Don't you understand this? Besides, Yi Yu of Gojoseon didn't start a massacre or rob. What nonsense are you spouting? That's right, that's right. If it were me, as long as I knew that it was Yi Yu of Gojoseon, I would hand it over with both hands without any hesitation. I was just wondering why Yi Yu of Gojoseon suddenly advanced to the 5 elements divine constitution. From the looks of it, it should have something to do with the spirit stones. How dare you spout nonsense? The spirit stones can only be used for cultivation. It has nothing to do with the advancement of one's constitution, okay? F***CK off, it doesn't matter. How could Yi Yu of Gojoseon's subordinates possibly borrow the spirit stones? It might be related, but I'm not sure what the specific relationship is. However, this isn't important. What's important is that Yi Yu of Gojoseon has to return the spirit stones. Hehe, do you guys think that those people who asked for the spirit stones will be killed by Yi Yu of Gojoseon? Are you F***king insulting Yi Yu of Gojoseon's character? Ignore this idiot. He's asking for it. There's no need to interfere. The world channel was in an uproar. Yi Chen glanced at it again. Then, with a thought, the space in front of him became distorted. After taking a look at the distorted space, Yi Chen stepped into it and disappeared. At the teleportation point in Ping County, the space suddenly became distorted. Then, Yi Chen stepped out and appeared at the teleportation point. At this moment, a few exclamations suddenly rang out. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, after hearing the exclamations, Yi Chen glanced at the players who were nervous because they saw him. Then, he looked at the teleportation point. At this moment, the teleportation point suddenly lit up. Then, groups of players walked out from it. When these players saw Yi Chen, they were all stunned. Then, they hurriedly bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Sir, I'm sorry." "Greetings, Lord Yu of Beach." When Yi Chen heard this, he glanced at these players and said, "You have provided the spirit stones." "Yes, he did." "Stay." "No, leave immediately." After Yi Chen finished speaking, the players who were teleported to Ping County hurriedly left the teleportation point, leaving only 3 people behind. When Yi Chen saw this, he looked at the 3 players and asked, "How many spirit stones did you lose? Report how many spirit stones you lost." When Yi Chen finished speaking, the 3 players couldn't help but shudder. It was obvious that they were very nervous and afraid. After a short hesitation, one of them gritted his teeth and said, "Lord Yu of Beach, I lost 18,000 pieces of low-grade spirit stones." When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and waved his right hand. 18,000 pieces of low-grade spirit stones instantly appeared at the feet of the player who spoke. After reporting the number, the player whose heart was in his mouth was stunned when he saw this number. He didn't expect Yi Chen to really give him 18,000 pieces of low-grade spirit stones. After regaining his senses, the player hurriedly bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Thank you, Lord Yu of Beach. Thank you, Lord Yu of Beach." When the 2 players heard this, they looked at each other and reported the number. $11,028. $9,656. When Yi Chen heard this, he waved his right hand and 2 piles of spirit stones instantly appeared at the feet of the 2 players. When the 2 players saw this, they were overjoyed. Then, they hurriedly bowed to Yi Chen and said, "Thank you, Lord Yu of Beach." When Yi Chen heard this, he waved his hand and said, "Get the spirit stones quickly. Get the spirit stones and leave quickly. Don't disturb the people behind you." "Yes. Thank you, Lord Yu of Beach." When the 3 players heard this, they hurriedly counted the spirit stones at their feet and hurriedly left the place. The 3 of them didn't lie. If they lied, Yi Chen's divine sense would immediately detect that something was amiss. Then, Yi Chen wouldn't hesitate to kill the 3 of them and wouldn't give them a second chance. The 3 Lord-level players who first arrived at Yubei Ping County received their compensation and left. As for the Lord-level players who hadn't received their compensation, they came here one by one and received their compensation from Yi Chen. 8 minutes later, Yi Chen replenished the spirit stones lost by the last Lord-level player. He glanced at the large group of players in the distance, then took a step forward and disappeared. It was true that Yi Chen was cruel, cold, and merciless. However, Yi Chen had his own principles when doing things. He would not take advantage of his powerful cultivation and influence to do things like snatch things by force. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have returned the spirit stones that his subordinates and spiritual pets had snatched from the Lord-level players. Of course, it was also thanks to the fact that the Lord-level players didn't go against Yi Chen or scheme against him. Otherwise, not only would Yi Chen not give them the spirit stones, but he would also kill them all. Reincarnation, Immortal City, Castellan's Mansion. The space suddenly distorted. Then, Yi Chen stepped out and appeared here. The moment Yi Chen appeared, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Guojia, Pang Tong, and Jia Su's voices sounded. "Greetings, Lord." Chapter 12:24. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded, then walked to the main seat and sat down. In the next second, Yi Chen looked at his subordinates and asked, "Is there news from Luoyang?" When Yi Chen said this, Guojia nodded, then stepped forward and bowed. "Master, according to our scouts, all the imperial physicians in Luoyang Imperial Palace have already headed to Weiyang Palace. Presumably, His Majesty will pass away in less than 3 minutes." When Yi Chen heard Guojia's words, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, with a thought, he released his divine sense. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Luoyang, which was 10,000 li away. Luoyang Imperial Palace. "All of you, do your best to treat His Majesty." Otherwise, I will have your entire family beheaded. Looking at Lu Hong, Zhang Rang's face was getting paler and paler, and his body was trembling non-stop. After calling out to him multiple times, to no avail, he turned to the imperial physician who was treating Lu Hong and shouted in a shrill voice. When Empress He heard Zhang Rang's words, she narrowed her eyes and coldly said, Zhang Changshi, His Majesty is critically ill, yet you are making such a big fuss. What are you doing? Hurry up and leave. When Zhang Rang heard this, his body suddenly stiffened, and he hurriedly bowed. Your Highness, this servant knows his mistake, this servant knows his mistake. However, this servant is worried about His Majesty. Please forgive this servant. Seeing that Lu Hong was about to pass away, Zhang Rang, who relied on Lu Hong to obtain power, would definitely dare to oppose Empress He in the past. Because at that time Lu Hong was still alive. But now, seeing that Lu Hong was about to pass away, how could Zhang Rang dare to act like this? After all, the power of eunuchs all came from the emperor. With the emperor's approval, the eunuchs could summon the wind and summon the rain. With the emperor gone, the eunuchs' power source would also vanish. If they wanted to continue obtaining power, they could only curry favor with the next emperor and obtain the emperor's approval. At this moment, there was only one person in the great Han Empire who was most likely to inherit the throne, and that was Liu Bian. Empress He was Liu Bian's biological mother. Therefore, Zhang Rang, who used to be arrogant and domineering, didn't dare to talk back to Empress He now. As soon as Zhang Rang finished speaking, Empress He glanced at Zhang Rang and then looked at the imperial physician who was sweating profusely while trying to save Lu Hong. She opened her mouth and asked, Imperial physician, do your best to save His Majesty. You should know what will happen if you can't save His Majesty. Yes, sir. When the imperial physician heard this, his face turned pale, and he replied with a trembling voice. When Empress He heard this, she nodded. Then, she looked at the maid beside her and gave her a look. The maid who caught Empress He's gaze bowed, and then hurriedly left Weiyang Palace. Zhang Rang's face darkened when he saw this. When Empress He's personal maid left, it was obvious that she was going to look for General He Jin. This was something that Zhang Rang didn't want to see the most. However, at this moment, Zhang Rang couldn't do anything. He could only worry helplessly. At that instant, violent coughs could be heard all of a sudden. Cough, 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 cough. Your Majesty! Empress He came to the bedside and sat down beside the bed. She personally helped Lu Hong, who had just woken up. Father! Liu Bian and Lu Xie, who were standing at the side, saw this and shouted in unison. As soon as the two princes finished speaking, Zhang Rang immediately shed tears. He then knelt beside Lu Hong's bed and said emotionally, Brother Lu Hong, Your Majesty! You're finally awake. Sob, sob, sob. Lu Hong, who had just woken up, had a pale face. When he heard this, he took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Then, he looked directly at Zhang Rang and asked, Let Father, you? Where is you of Beach? Where did you of Beach go? When Empress He, who was supporting Lu Hong, heard this, her face suddenly changed. Lu Hong had just woken up, but he didn't talk to her. Instead, he talked to Zhang Rang. As his wife, how could she feel good about this? Liu Bian, who was standing at the side, was stunned. He didn't expect that his father didn't even care about him. On the other hand, Lu Xie, who was standing beside Liu Bian, showed a trace of disdain in his eyes. However, he quickly returned to normal. Lu Xie got Li Mubai's memory and knew about the history. However, when he started his sabotage plan, he was interrupted by Yi Chen and taken as a slave. It was because of this that Lu Xie looked at Lu Hong with disdain. This was because he knew that no matter what Lu Hong said, it would be useless. If he wanted to die, he would still die. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Lu Xie knew that his master, Yi Chen, was waiting for Lu Hong to die. Even if Lu Hong asked 1,000,000 times, it would be useless. As for Lu Xie, as Lu Hong's son, he should have a father-son relationship with Lu Hong. There was no such thing as him not showing such a look. One had to know that Lu Xie already knew about the history of the great Han dynasty from Li Mubai's memory. To be more precise, from the moment Lu Xie knew that Lu Hong would pass the throne to Lu Bian, his father-son relationship with Lu Hong was broken. Lu Bian was weak and incompetent. He didn't have the bearing of an emperor. Although Lu Xie was young, he was mature and capable in both civil and martial matters. Even if he inherited the throne, it should be him, Lu Xie, and not Lu Bian. This was what Lu Xie thought. It was also the reason why he broke off his father-son relationship with Lu Hong. Of course, even without this factor, his identity as Yi Chen's slave would still make him think this way. Otherwise, the slave contract would severely punish him. Just as Lu Xie's disdainful look flashed by, Zhang Rang's face paled. He then cried and bowed. "Your Majesty, Yu of Beech's master summoned Yu of Beech back to the sect. Now, Yu of Beech has gone deep into the mountains and forests. We don't know where you are, Yu. Yu of Beech has a master?" Lu Hong's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he hurriedly asked. "Reporting to your Majesty, he does." Yu of Beech's bizarre disappearance this time was to visit his master. Zhang Rang nodded and said. When Lu Hong heard this, he hurriedly looked at Zhang Rang and said, "Hurry up and hurry. Quick, hurry up and find the Ghost King for me. Let him bring his master to Luoyang to treat me. Your Majesty, this servant has already sent more people to investigate." When Zhang Rang heard this, she wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and then opened her mouth to speak. "What about the 100-flower wine? Has the 100-flower wine been brewed?" Lu Hong nodded and asked. Yi Chen had previously said that the 100-flower wine could nourish one's body and prolong one's life. Otherwise, Lu Hong wouldn't have said this. To be more precise, Lu Hong didn't want to die. He had placed all his hopes of survival on the 100-flower wine. There was no other way. Who asked the imperial physicians to be unable to heal his body? He could only place his hopes on the 100-flower wine that Yi Chen had mentioned. When Lu Hong finished speaking, Zhang Rang immediately burst into tears. "Your Majesty, Yu of Beech's Samsara city turned into ruins overnight. The 100-flower wine is gone." When Lu Hong heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. With a "pu" sound, he spat out a large mouthful of blood, which instantly dyed his clothes red. "Your Majesty, Father!" Empress He, Lu Bian, Lu Xie, and Zhang Rang cried out in unison. Chapter 12:25. It was not a good thing to vomit blood, especially when one was dying. Otherwise, Empress He, Lu Bian, Lu Xie, and Zhang Rang would not be so nervous. Of course, some of them were nervous. Among them, Lu Bian and Zhang Rang did not want Lu Hong to die, while Empress He and Lu Xie could not wait for Lu Hong to die. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Lu Hong, who had vomited a big mouthful of blood, was showing signs of terminal lucidity. In a few minutes, he would be completely dead. Who has the ability to destroy Yu of Beech's Samsara city? After Lu Hong roared with a pale face, Zhang Rang suddenly knelt on the ground and said, "Your Majesty, I've sent people to investigate. They saw a giant palm covering the sky. In my opinion, it should be an immortal who did this. That's why such a situation happened, immortal." Lu Hong was stunned when he heard the answer. When he came to himself, his face suddenly changed. No wonder Yu of Beech's master summoned Yu of Beech back to the sect. "It turns out that you are seeking refuge." After Lu Hong finished speaking, he suddenly sat up on the bed. He then looked at Zhang Rang and shouted, "Don't be so stupid. Pass my order. All the people of the Han dynasty, go into the mountain to find Yu of Beech. As long as Yu of Beech are found, I can prolong my life. As long as Yu of Beech are found, I can live forever." "Yes, Your Majesty. Your Majesty." When Zhang Rang heard this, He was slightly taken aback and hurriedly bowed. Hearing this, Empress, he glanced at Zhang Rang, and then looked at Lu Hong and said, "Your Majesty, it is indeed important to find you of beach. But what you need now is to rest. Don't think too much and don't get angry." After saying this, Empress, he looked at Lu Bian and said, "Bien, come over and help your imperial father lie down." Hearing Empress He's words, Lu Bian, who didn't know what to do or what to say, hurriedly nodded. "Yes, mother." After Lu Bian finished speaking, she came to the bedside and reached out her small hand. With the help of Empress she helped Lu Hong lie down again. It was also at this moment that Lu Hong saw Lu Bian and Lu Xie standing beside him. After being stunned for a short while, Lu Hong wanted to say something, but a feeling of extreme weakness instantly attacked him. Then, he saw Lu Hong's face turn deathly pale, and his breathing became abnormally rapid at this moment. "Heaven wants me dead." After roaring with unwillingness, Lu Hong spat out another mouthful of blood, which splashed onto Empress Lu Bian, and Zhang Rang. After Zhang Rang's exclamation, Lu Hong struggled to raise his right hand, and then pointed at Lu Bian and said, "Your Majesty, let father assist Bien well. After I die, let Bien inherit my throne, and find ye." At this point, Lu Hong's eyes suddenly popped out, and then he saw his arm weakly drooping on the bed. Then it bounced up and finally fell down, and there was no more movement. Seeing Lu Hong like this, Zhang Rang's face changed, and then he screamed, "Your Majesty!" Empress who was inexplicably surprised by Lu Hong's final decision, had just revealed a smile when she was immediately pushed back by Zhang Rang's scream. At the same time, the imperial physician, whose face changed greatly, trembled as he stepped forward to take Lu Hong's pulse. After a while, the imperial physician knelt on the ground with a bang, and then he bowed to Empress with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, His Majesty has passed away." When Empress heard this, she glanced at the already dead Lu Hong, and then knelt on the ground with a plop. "Your Majesty." After an inexplicable cry of grief, Empress tears fell down with a patter-patter sound. "Father." At this time, Lu Bian and Lu Xie knelt on the ground together and cried loudly. As for Zhang Rang, his face was distorted as he cried loudly. At the same time, the palace maids and eunuchs inside and outside the main hall all knelt on the ground in groups. For a moment, a sad atmosphere enveloped the entire palace. Yi Chen, who had released his divine sense and saw all of this, let out a long sigh. An emperor of a generation had died just like this. Everything in the past had become a cloud of smoke in the past. Sad, lamentable, however, chaos was about to begin. Just when Yi Chen thought of this, a world announcement suddenly rang out. Ding! The emperor of the Han dynasty, Lu Hong, has passed away due to illness. Crown Prince Lu Bian has succeeded the throne. The country mourns for 7 days. During this period, the player's experience from killing monsters will be 0, and the drop rate will be 0. The world announcement rang out 3 times in a row, and it instantly caused an uproar in the world channel. F***CK. Is there a mistake? Lu Hong is dead, so what? Why don't we get any experience from killing monsters? F***CK. The mourning of the country is the natives' business. It has nothing to do with us players. F***CK. What the hell is going on? I'm killing a big boss in the wilderness. F***CK. Mother***ker. I'm attacking a huge mountain stronghold. F***CK. All the losses we've suffered so far are all in vain. F***CK. All of you are short-sighted and inexperienced. Don't you see anything from this world announcement? See nothing. All I know is that Lu Hong is dead. I don't get any experience from killing monsters, and I don't get any items. Idiot, think about it carefully. Lu Hong is dead, and Lu Bian has succeeded the throne. What does that mean? F***CK. Dongzhi was chaos, and the warlords are fighting for supremacy. That's right, that's it. I think it won't be long before Yu of Gojoseon sends out his troops and sweeps the world. F***ck. That's not important, okay? The most important thing is that once the great Han dynasty falls into chaos, those civil officials and generals will jump out. That way we can take the opportunity to recruit a group of subordinates. Recruit subordinates? Don't think too much. Don't forget what Yu of Gojoseon does. He won't let you recruit those historical generals and civil officials. First come, first served. Even if Yu of Gojoseon is powerful, you can't just snatch them, right? That's hard to say. Moreover, you might not be able to recruit those historical generals and civil officials. If you want to recruit those people, you have to have enough prestige and power. Just relying on your mouth is equivalent to dreaming. You can say whatever you want. Anyway, I'm preparing to make a fortune from the Dongzhuo Rebellion and the Duke's struggle for hegemony. I'll try to get some innate attribute points. Hee, that's right. As long as the great Han dynasty falls into chaos, there will be missions everywhere. When the time comes, everyone will have a chance to earn some money. The World Channel was abuzz with activity. Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after taking a look. There were indeed civil officials and generals, but if anyone were to be recruited, it would be him. No one could even think about snatching them away. Thinking of this, Yi Chen looked straight at Guojia and Dian Wei. Feng Shao, Dian Wei, follow me out of the city. Let's meet the talents of the great Han dynasty. Chapter 12:26. The moment Yi Chen spoke, Guojia and Dian Wei stepped forward and bowed to Yi Chen. Yes, Your Excellency. Yi Chen nodded and then looked at Zhao Yun, Guan Yu, Jia Su, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials. Prepare the army for war. It won't be long before war comes again. Yes, Your Excellency. The eyes of Zhao Yun, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Jia Su, Pang Tong, and the other generals and officials lit up, and they hastily bowed to Yi Chen. Yi Chen nodded and then looked at Guojia and Dian Wei. Let's go. After saying that, Yi Chen waved his right hand and the space within the hall instantly distorted. Then, Yi Chen took a step forward and disappeared. Guojia and Dian Wei looked at each other and smiled. Then, they walked into the twisted space and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi Chen had gone out this time to plunder the officials and generals of the great Han Empire. Of course, he did not plunder all of them, but only a portion. Although the great Han Empire had many officials and generals, Yi Chen did not take a liking to all of them. Moreover, many of them were loyal to the various feudal lords, so Yi Chen did not want to spend the effort to subdue them. There was no need, and it would be a waste of time. In an empty alley in the city of Guangping County, the space suddenly twisted. Then, Yi Chen, Dian Wei, and Guojia stepped out and appeared there. Your Excellency, where are we? Guojia looked at the building outside the alley and was stunned for a moment. Then, he asked Yi Chen, what is it? Yi Chen smiled and said, Guangping Prefecture. Guangping Prefecture. Guangping County. As Guojia spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Yi Chen and asked, Your Excellency, do you want to recruit Zhu Shou? That's right, it's him. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. When Guojia heard this, he smiled and bowed. Your Excellency, although this person has an official position, he has yet to find a wise leader. Moreover, he is extremely skilled in strategy, so we can give it a try. Let's go and meet County Magistrate Zhu. When Yi Chen heard this, he chuckled and nodded his head before speaking. Yi Chen had previously thought of searching through the civil and military officials of the great Han Empire. However, at that time, many of the civil and military officials had yet to take office. Even if Yi Chen wanted to find them, he couldn't find them. But now that Lu Hong was dead, all of the famous historical officials and generals of the great Han Empire would appear. Under such circumstances, It would not be difficult for Yi Chen to find famous historical officials and generals. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi Chen would not be able to justify himself if he did not take advantage of this opportunity. When Yi Chen finished speaking, Guojia and Dian Wei smiled at each other and bowed. Yes, Your Excellency. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled faintly and walked out of the alley. He looked at the commoners on the main street, then headed straight for the county office. Guojia and Dian Wei followed closely behind. After a few steps, the three of them disappeared. The surrounding citizens who saw this scene could not help but be stunned on the spot. Then, they rubbed their eyes hard and found nothing. They shook their heads in confusion and continued to move forward. When Yi Chen, Dian Wei, and Guojia arrived at the county office, they did not cause any chaos because no one saw them. At this moment, Zhu Shou was handling some affairs. Yi Chen brought Guojia and Dian Wei to watch from the side. As time passed, Yi Chen saw Zhu Shou's ability and character. An hour later, Yi Chen looked at Guojia. Sensing Yi Chen's questioning gaze, Guojia bowed to Yi Chen and gave him a thumbs up. Seeing this, Yi Chen could not help but smile. After which, with a thought, he revealed himself. Zhu Shou, who had just finished handling his affairs, was stunned when he saw this. Then, his face darkened. How dare a Jianghu sorcerer play tricks on the court? Aren't you afraid that I will put you in chains and parade you through the streets? As soon as Zhu Shou finished his words, Dian Wei widened his eyes and roared, What? How dare you? This is Yu of Beach. Come forward and greet him. Dian Wei, stand down. When Yi Chen heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched and he said. Zhu Shou, who was stunned by Dian Wei's words, came back to his senses when he heard this. He quickly looked at Yi Chen. After looking at him carefully and confirming that Yi Chen was the invincible general of agile cavalry, Zhu Shou was stunned again. He quickly stood up and left his seat. Then, he bowed to Yi Chen solemnly and said, Zhu Shou didn't know that Yu of Beach was here. Please forgive me if I have offended you. Lord Yu of Beach, please forgive me. It's fine. It's my fault for disturbing you. When Yi Chen heard this, he quickly helped Zhu Shou up and said. When Zhu Shou heard this, he looked at Yi Chen in surprise and asked, May I know what Yu of Beach is here for? Do you need my help? I'm only here for you, Zhu Shou. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled and said. When Zhu Shou heard this, he was stunned. Then, he realized that Yi Chen wanted to recruit him. When he turned around, Zhu Shou's eyes lit up. Without thinking, he bowed to Yi Chen solemnly and said, Zhu Shou greets the Lord. Ding! The first-rate historical official Zhu Shou wishes to recognize you as his master. Will you accept? When the system's notification sounded, Yi Chen accepted without hesitation. This time, Yi Chen wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to plunder. The officials and generals of the Great Han Empire would not refuse. When Yi Chen made his decision, the system's notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully obtaining the loyalty of first-rate historical official Zhu Shou. Special reward to player Yi Chen, 1,000 gold. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chen helped Zhu Shou up with a smile and patted Zhu Shou's shoulder. It's my great fortune to be able to obtain Zhu Shou's help. When Zhu Shou heard this, his eyes lit up. Then, he bowed to Yi Chen excitedly and said, Zhu Shou swears to follow the Lord to the death. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen, Zhu Shou's loyalty plus 10. You have advanced to die loyal. Who was Yi Chen? He was the cavalry general of the Great Han Empire, the governor of Yuzhou, Yu of Beach. No one could compare to him in terms of prestige and military achievements. Just the fact that such an existence had personally come to visit him was enough to make Zhu Shou ecstatic. Not to mention that Yi Chen had personally expressed his intention to recruit him. That was why Zhu Shou was so excited and became die loyal because of this. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chen was taken aback. Damn, it's so easy to become a die-hard fan. However, if it weren't for the foundation that I laid and the reputation and prestige that spread throughout the great Han Empire, Zhu Shou wouldn't have become loyal immediately. The prerequisite for the loyalty of civil and military officials was somewhat similar, but also different. Among them, civil officials' loyalty was the most difficult, but also the easiest. It was difficult because it was hard to convince loyal. It was easy because as long as one had enough reputation, prestige, and power, it was easy to convince loyal. At this moment, Zhu Shou's loyal had a lot to do with Yi Chen's reputation, prestige, and power. Such an existence was 1 in a million. If Zhu Shou didn't become loyal, he wouldn't even have the chance to follow him in the future. It was because Zhu Shou knew this that he chose to follow Yi Chen without hesitation. Then, because of Yi Chen's words, Zhu Shou became loyal. Not bad. Thinking of this, Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. At this moment, a world announcement suddenly rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining the loyalty of a top historical official, Zhu Shou. Special reward to player Yi Chen, 1000 gold. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.